Good evening, Vacaville. This is the regularly scheduled City Council meeting in the City of Vacaville at 6 p.m., January 27th, 2026. May I have a roll call?
Council Agency Authority Member Stockton. Here. Ritchie. Here. Chapman. Here. Fremount. Here. Wiley. Here. Vice Mayor, Vice Chair Silva. Ready. Mayor Chair Cardley.
Here. And if you are able, will you please rise for a moment of silence followed by the pledge? Councilmember Stockton, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we've completed closed session. There's nothing to report out. And moving on, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
No changes.
Okay. With that, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and Chapman seconds. All in favor? Aye. And reports to the City Council. And anyone who has anything to report out on any boards, commissions, and committee meetings. Councilmember Wiley.
This week, there was a civic leaders breakfast at Travis Air Force Base, and then we also had our TRAF meeting on Monday. And a lot of people probably have heard that there is the air show coming in April 25th and 26th, and they're looking for sponsors. So if anyone knows a company or a group that would like to sponsor in a big way or a small way, there are people to talk to on base about the air show. And it was just interesting because they gave us other updates that are happening on the base and things like that. So I attended those two meetings this week.
Vice Mayor Silva.
Yeah, thank you. So attended the Cal Cities Environmental Quality Committee through Cal Cities NorCal region. I think I'll forward our city clerk the information that was given to us just for our council to have access to it. The first meeting was just really about highlighting the state of California. And one key thing in there was really just that really got everybody riled up from all elected representatives at the meeting, was just the huge increase in cost to power in relation to inflation and the ongoing need and desire to continue infrastructure improvements and what that meant for our residents, as well as those of us cities who are on solar power particularly. So they're looking for feedback on Cal Cities is looking for feedback on what priorities that they should be on the lookout for to advocate on our local cities. So any feedback that you all have at any time, please share with me so I can forward that by the deadline, ideally within the next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chapman.
Thank you. Solano Transportation Authority met last week, following our last meeting. It would be my last one for filling in as an alternate for the mayor, which I had the pleasure of doing while serving as vice mayor. Um, They were giving updates on Highway 29 and 37, the work that's being proposed. And the other thing is I also attended the League of California Cities. I found, oftentimes you attend conferences and you say, okay, what am I going to learn new? But I found it very informative, in particular on Thursday. The information that was being provided and the experts, the individuals that were presenting were very knowledgeable and really kept you engaged. Now, I am sorry that I wasn't there on Wednesday to get the training, but I had a death in my family back east, and so I wasn't quite in the position, didn't have the mindset at the time to attend on Wednesday. But I did go Thursday and Friday and look forward to the work ahead of us, which is plenty.
Yeah, great. Appreciate that, and sorry to hear about that. Just a quick update on the STA discussion that I had shared in the prior conversation at council. The STA board continued to discuss the routes, the lines that service Vacaville and going towards Davis. It was heavily and hotly debated, but I think in the end, the direction was given to direct the subcommittee, which I'm a part of, to work with everyone and all the stakeholders to figure it out and to actually find ways that can, in a hybrid way, you'd have to go back and watch it, but it was a discussion, do you fund it entirely into a cliff or do you cut these lines? And it's been a challenge, and so I appreciate it, and I know our public works director got a visual when I said that it potentially could be heated, and it was, but it was respectful. But it's to make sure that we're going to allow transportation to continue, because how important it is for Vacaville, Dixon, and then going towards Sacramento. So more to come on that. Yes.
If I add, I would like to also mention the number of accidents that are occurring on 80, especially in between Fairfield or as far back as American Canyon up past Vacaville. I guess the number of the accidents have increased along that corridor. And is it because of the speed? I'm not, they're not saying what the cause is, whether they're taking advantage of the going in and out of the fast track lane. But we've had our share. And I just would like to encourage our residents and people driving up and down the corridor, I-80, let's slow it down. Let's slow it down. I'll hate for them to reduce the speed limit because of a few that are.
Traffic education and enforcement saves lives. So sometimes it does require that, people to pay attention. So I have heard a lot of the same things. So, Councilmember Ritchie.
Thank you. I almost forgot. Between this meeting and last meeting, we had an amazing, here in Vacaville, we had our MLK celebration. Almost forgot. And it was, as much stuff is going on, other words you can use, you can fill it in our country. It was amazing to show up to Vacaville. And as I look back at Chief Poland and our new fire chief, but it was amazing to see as much beep is going on in the country, in Vacaville. It was amazing. I mean, it was a microcosm of what you want the country to look like. It was just a lot of great speeches. Our mayor gave a great speech. I gave a big hug on stage. It was just emotional. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. And I say it again, it is so amazing to see the community, but law enforcement from so many different branches were there shoulder to shoulder, with the community. And people, I don't think, realize the symbolic symbols of that, because that wasn't the case when they did the walk. That wasn't the case. And in fact, is when I see our chief there and other chiefs side by side with people, it just, to me, it always touches me very strong. Because maybe because my family's from part of the country that had a lot of problems, and that wasn't the case. But in our community, they're shoulder to shoulder, and their support was so important. So thank you. Now, it was a great time. I wish the country could have been in that room. And like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you. Well, moving on, I'm going to go ahead and ask our city manager, any reports to the city council?
No reports tonight, Mayor.
Nothing. We do have a presentation tonight, and so I'm going to ask our Chief of Police, Chris Poland, to come forward. This clearly is something that I'm familiar with as when I sat in your seat, but it would be important to hear from you once I read this proclamation. Any activities or anything that you would like to share when it comes to human trafficking and its implications. So, whereas human trafficking is a nationwide public health and civil rights crisis with victims and survivors present in all communities, including the city of Vacaville, and human trafficking encompasses both labor and sex trafficking and affects international and domestic victims of every background, race, gender, sexual orientation, and economic status. And whereas young people, while being particularly vulnerable to trafficking and exploitation, often face significant barriers in the reporting of such incidents. California consistently recorded the highest human trafficking rates in the United States, reported 3,378 cases in 2024. Whereas collaborative efforts are crucial in combating human trafficking, law enforcement, federal and state agencies, nonprofits, social service providers, and all the rest of the non-governmental organizations, including our local SANE SART, are actively working to eradicate human trafficking in Solano County. And whereas the dedicated work of SANE SART and Nature of Sound within the Solano Anti-Trafficking Coalition has been instrumental in educating the public about violence and exploitation and in raising awareness about the pressing issue of human trafficking. And whereas all communities must actively engage in preventing human trafficking by promoting safe, healthy, and supportive environments, and by supporting initiatives that aim to eradicate this crisis. And the city of Vacaville strives to be a community where human trafficking is non-existent, where opportunities are available to all, and where every individual is valued and supported, thus ensuring freedom and a dignified life for all its inhabitants. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John Carley, Mayor of the City of Vacaville, on behalf of the Vacaville City Council, do hereby proclaim January 2026 National Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month in the City of Vacaville. And this city acknowledges the critical work of the Solano Anti-Trafficking Coalition, SANE SART, Nature of Sound, and their coalition partners, and commits to supporting their ongoing efforts to educate, prevent, and combat human trafficking. Thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. As we all know, human trafficking is not an abstract issue. It impacts real people here in our community. In 2025, the Vacaville Police Department continues to lead the way. I'm very proud of the work that's being done by our vice detectives, our crime impact team, and how we proactively work with our regional federal partners, AKA the FBI Task Force, to identify traffickers, rescue victims, and connect survivors with critical resources. This work has led to multiple arrests, state, federal prosecutions, or state and federal convictions. Most importantly, the rescue of juvenile victims. But our focus goes beyond enforcement. To put a face to the issue, we are currently working with a survivor who was trafficked at the age of 17. The offender in that case was recently sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. Tragically, she was victimized again. Her abuser took her passport, social security card, driver's license, birth certificate, and any money that she had left, effectively stripping her of her identity. While our detectives arrested the suspect, the work did not stop there. The critical role of our Family Resource Center, our staff is working with her, alongside her, to restore her identity, connect her with services, and to support her path forward toward recovery. In addition, our 2 digital crime detectives play a vital role in capturing and preserving critical digital evidence, which in many cases allows us to hold our offenders accountable without requiring the victim to testify which reduces further trauma. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I appreciate the proclamation and the council's continued support to raise awareness, to protect the most vulnerable, and to hold our traffickers accountable. On a side note, we are, as I'm standing at this podium right now, we are working with our regional partners statewide right now on several trafficking investigations. And again, Vacaville is continuing to lead the way. We have several detectives who have been working on human trafficking cases for a number of years. And with your continued support, we will continue to hold people accountable to ensuring that our victims have a voice. So I just want to say thank you very much for the proclamation and the support.
Yeah, thank you. And be sure and thank the entire staff, because so much has changed over the years, and where the focus is. And I've watched it evolve, and where it is today is where it needs to be. And the city of Vacaville should be very proud of the department, the teams, and the partnerships. So continue the great work.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. All right, we're going to move on to consent calendar. We've got several items on here, 9A through 9G. Any member of the public or the council wishing to pull an item for discussion?
Well, 9E, please.
9E, okay. All right, so 9E will be pulled. So from items A through G minus 9E, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second from Councilmember Ritchie. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll go ahead and discuss item E. Vice Mayor Silva.
So I just want to recognize people in the public that have expressed different opinions about this particular item. City manager or city attorney, whomever might be appropriate, could you just please explain what an INRA, exclusive negotiation rights agreement is, what it isn't, as far as what's involved in that?
Sure. An exclusive negotiating rights agreement is basically an agreement between the city and another party wherein we have a property that we are potentially interested in settling. It allows both parties to do due diligence on whether or not the sale is appropriate, the uses are appropriate entitlements could be obtained, but it is not an actual sale of the property. If the parties are able to come to some sort of agreement on the sale of the property, then that would come to council for a separate action.
And what is typically the benefit of pursuing an INRA versus anything else?
So what that does is parties that are interested in making an investment to explore an opportunity of developing a city parcel, it gives them the assurance that they're going to have the time to do their due diligence to see if that option for that purchase will work for them. And it reserves that for them. And during the time that we're in that exclusive agreement, the city is not permitted to negotiate with another party for the sale of the same property. So it gives them a little bit of an assurance that the investment they make in doing their due diligence is protected until which time that exclusive negotiating rights agreement expires.
And so typically, within this back and forth correspondence, if you will, that's when, if members in the community had specific concerns or interests, they can express that. One way is express that to their electeds. And then that can be one option, is to discuss that through the negotiations.
Yes, and additionally, with the one that is currently under consideration, it has a specific public outreach component to it that will require certain engagement with the public and meetings in order for the public to have opportunity to express their opinions related to the project.
All right, thank you.
All right, any member of the public wishing to speak on this? Anyone, you can come forward and speak.
I don't attend the City of Vacaville meetings very often. I work for Solano County and have for 23 years. My current job is as the airport manager. And so I'm here twofold. One is just to say on behalf of Solano County and this project, while it has lots of merit, the county hasn't been engaged regarding this project. We we went to a preliminary review committee meeting, and we submitted Supervisor Vasquez's concerns, which include a conservation easement on this property. And it's also, it's supposed to be a clear zone for the airport. So we're not seeing any of the pictures from the project, but it's very close to the airport's approach and runway 2. And so where this complex would be built is over where aircraft turn base to final. And so they're descending over this little rolling hill, which in this project, based on the preliminary plans, is supposed to be turned into a sports complex with people all over it. So I just, before we go, sealing this exclusive agreement with this company, I think it's important that you, as members of this council, be aware that the county has serious concerns, and from an airport standpoint, it takes away the critical place for aircraft to put down if they have engine problems. And we have had a crash over in that area, so it's not even an abstract. It happens because that's a critical part of flight. So thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Mr. Vice Mayor, staff. My name is Hal Padgett. I live in the neighborhood across Brown Street and around the corner from the proposed site. I'm not quite familiar with exactly what the plan is. I believe there are to be 9 baseball fields set up there. That, I guess, would be in addition to the 4 fields that are already across the street in the Centennial Park and are maintained quite well by the city already. I don't see a tremendous amount of use of those. Maybe they happen at times I don't pass by, but I wonder about the local use of that facility if it were to be built. And then B, the tremendous amount of traffic that, if it were to be successfully used, the amount of traffic that would come into the area and impact let me slow down. That would impact the local neighborhood there. So I guess I would just say that I'm concerned about what this would do to change the neighborhood, and I understand the need for exclusivity in that period of time, but I don't really see another use coming. So it would seem that somebody with that interest would just simply want to, make their plan, make their proposal, and go from there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Good evening.
As many of you know, my name is Keith Thompson. I am one of the principals with Solano Youth Sports Development Group, and I can address some of the concerns, although it would take way more than my 3 minutes to address all of them. We have engaged the county. We have met with airport land use commissioners on multiple occasions, and we have retained Johnson Aviation Consulting, which is a prominent aviation consulting firm in Southern California. They've worked with the Nutry Airport. They've worked with the Travis Air Force Base Airport. They are very familiar with Solano County. They are going to complete a formal safety study on this land. There are 2 zones defined by the Airport Land Use Commission documents. And all of our fields, open space, there's over 30 acres of open space and nature preserves in this proposed plan. And they're all well within. They allow for landing of emergency aircraft. Knock on wood, we hope we never have that again. But those safety buffers are in there. It meets all of FAR 77 and all of the FAA regulations. It is well within the safety buffer provided by both the FAA and the Airport Land Use Commission documents. In regard to traffic, I also live in Browns Valley, so that's also a concern of mine. But the council and City of Vacaville already has a general plan to widen the Allison curve to 2 lanes. We've taken that into consideration. That should allow us additional buffer for traffic. Plus, our plan has a road inside that will hopefully divert the vast majority of the traffic away from the Browns Valley Allison Road curve. So we've taken those safety considerations into account, the traffic into account. This is all part of our plan. I have lived in Vacaville for 27, 28 years. Most of that time in Browns Valley, I go up and down Browns Valley Road 30 times a day, probably, it seems like. I want it to be safe. My parents fly. They have they're general aviation pilots as well. They land at Nutter Airport. I want it to be safe for the residents. I want it to be safe for the people using the park. I'm a local. I live and play, and my kids have played at Centennial Park. So I want it to be safe, and that's why we're doing this. This is not an outside entity coming in. These are 2 local gentlemen who have raised families right here in Vacaville and continue living here in Vacaville. We're just trying to bring some additional amenities to our community.
Yeah, thank you. Seeing no one else, I'm going to go ahead and, unless there is more comment, it looks like there is for our Community Development Director and our Economic Development Director, now that it's merged.
Thank you. If the public comments closed, I just wanted to respond to a question I was hearing about the planning process.
Okay.
So this is really, the NRA is not even the first step in the planning process. It's actually what gives this developer, or could give them, the right to get into the feasibility that's described by our city attorney. There is included in the NRA this provision that a community outreach plan be developed, and that outreach occurs throughout the process so that people are not surprised when and if this project is feasible, and then they go in and file their applications for a formal process. This is a general plan amendment, it's a rezoning, it's a design review. I can't remember if there's a use permit involved, but the point is it's actually a substantial entitlement process, and that's going to be where staff and our experts are looking at the reports that Mr. Thompson is referencing, looking at traffic studies, really doing that deep dive into all the details. So tonight, we don't have all the answers, but the NRA would allow these people to spend the money and the resources to develop feasibility, and then perhaps come back to the council with that DDA or something similar.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Stockton?
Yes, just one point of clarification or a question. I know that there are county parcels that are in that general area. We're only talking about the areas that the city of Vacaville owns as far as the property, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so if this organization wanted to contact Solano County for their, to deal with some of those parcels, they would go to them, correct, for a different process?
They would, as part of perhaps purchasing those parcels, but that would be a subsequent conversation. As documented in the staff report, and we did this on purpose, there's been feedback received from the county to city staff about this concept. There's definitely some concerns, but those would be worked through as part of this development team working with the county, and then ultimately, if this is feasible, as part of the development review process that I mentioned.
Okay, then is now the time for a motion, Mr. Mayor. There are other lights.
Seeing no lights, I'll take a motion.
A motion that we approve the NRA.
Second.
You have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you very much. And to the public, just understand, this is before you even get to the front door. We can't truly know what a project can look like unless we study it. And so that's the purpose of an NRA. And so all these things are going to have to be asked and answered. And I appreciate the comments, and I do know that there's been some feedback from Supervisor Vasquez. I'm very familiar with that, and I think that those are all the things that have to be looked at and addressed. So no one's bypassing any of that at this point. All right, we'll go ahead and move on from consent now that item E has been addressed, and so next is business from the floor. This is the opportunity for anyone in the public to address the council on anything that's not on tonight's agenda, but it's in our jurisdiction. You can come forward and speak for 3 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. First of all, I was at a lot of things have happened in the last couple of weeks. I was at the Planning Commission meeting last Monday, and they were talking about the BESS ordinance that we were all there for. The city staff in the opinion of the people who I know that were concerned with best, we think the city staff did a really good job. And when it comes up on to the council, oh yeah, go team. Okay, now, or at least those evil people at California Forever, of course, have been busy over the last several weeks. I find it really interesting that when we find out that that Mare Island Dry Dock Company became bankrupt because they missed that Coast Guard contract they really needed, mysteriously, like 3 or 4 days later, California Forever is announcing that, oh, they have a partnership with the Nimitz Group that runs Mare Island. So I guess they're going to buy up the scraps of Solano Dry Dock very cheaply. I don't think things like that get arranged very quickly. My tinfoil hat tells me they had something to do with it, but hey, I guess that's games are played very roughly. Now, I noticed in the newspaper article, they start conflating things. Remember John Garamendi said years ago, hey, California Forever, you want to do a shipyard, do it out here at Mare Island. Well, Mare Island's not going to be a shipyard. It can be a ship repair facility. But I noticed that they're talking about a, Bay Area, quote unquote, shipyard, and they somehow try to tie Collinsville into it, which is just, we won't even go there. But if they do stuff on the other side of the Carquinez Strait, and I noticed from the way they worded it, they could have been including the, Old Hunters Point area. Hey, I'll cheer them on. I don't know how the economics of it are going to work out, but I do notice that, come on, that National Steel and Shipbuilding down in San Diego has partnered with a Korean company, and they're talking about they need to expand operations, but they don't have space to in San Diego. So, hey, maybe there is a place for Hunters Point. But it's, California Forever, remember, is only a land company. And remember, for California Forever to really do anything with their property, it's got to cost the taxpayers billions of dollars. Just remember that, like former State Senator Bill Dodd said, it's nothing but a sleazy land swindle.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Good evening.
If it's okay, I'm going to read
Sure.
so I stay on track. First off, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a parent of a child who plays on a 4th grade basketball team in the city's Park and Recreation League. I'd like to briefly explain what occurred and why I'm respectfully asking the council to reconsider a decision that directly affects the children. During one of our recent league games, the players experienced a great deal of confusion. Fouls were being called repeatedly, and at one point the boys were even told they were not allowed to jump while playing defense by officials. The players were frustrated, but it's important to clarify that they expressed that frustration only to their coaches. The players did not question referees, show frustration towards officials, or on the court. They also did not behave disrespectfully during the game. Parents in the stands also remained respectful and did not yell or confront officials. Throughout the season, our coaches, players, and families have not had any issues with the referees, league staff, or Parks and Recreation before this game, nor at any point since. There have been no warnings, complaints, or disciplinary actions involving this group. This incident was an isolated moment, not a pattern of behavior. I also want to clarify that no foul language or derogatory remarks were used during this incident. Additionally, this group of players and coaches have been together for several years, including across different sports, without prior issues with referees, opposing teams, or league staff. During this game, an assistant coach, in a moment of frustration, made a comment to a referee and was immediately given a technical foul. There was no warnings issued prior. Immediately following the game, the assistant coach apologized to the players, the families, and the park and recreation leadership. In the days that followed, she also personally apologized to both referees involved, who were very understanding. She has taken responsibility for her actions and has repeatedly asked for any consequences to be placed on her and not the children. After this incident, the league sent out an email stating that any teams with a technical foul would be automatically disqualified from playing in playoffs. This consequence was not clearly stated in the league rulebook at the beginning of the season and was communicated only after the game through an email, which not all families even received. Throughout the season, rules and interpretations within the league have changed, often without consistent communication to coaches or families. We have adapted each time. What feels inconsistent is that when a coach makes one mistake, that same grace is not given or extended in return. Even at the middle and high school level, technical fouls issued to a coach do not result in team-wide disqualification in playoffs. In this case, the coach has offered to sit out games or accept other discipline, yet the children are the ones losing their opportunity to compete. These are fourth grade kids. They practiced, they showed up, and they earned their place. Removing their ability to participate in playoffs does not teach accountability or sportsmanship. It teaches that their effort can be erased by something completely outside of their control.
Yeah, thank you. What I'd like to know is have you had any conversation with city staff?
I believe that the staff has had communication with Parks and Recreation to try and resolve this matter with them, but there has been no budge.
Okay. Well, our director is in the back, and maybe the two of you could speak as you step away from the podium, make the connection, and so that we can look into it as city staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, they are fourth graders?
Yes.
Okay, and thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close business from the floor, and we will move on to item 11A. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, thank you. This item is 2 resolutions reaffirming prior actions regarding the downtown specific plan and 2 ordinances to modify the Vacaville Municipal Code related to downtown specific plan entitled Land Use Regulations. And Associate Planner Demir Powell is here to present.
Good evening, Mayor Carley, and all those in attendance. The Community Development Department is proposing amendments to Title 14 of the Land Use and Development Code of the Vacaville Municipal Code, including divisions 14.02, interpretations and definitions, 14.09, zoning, and 14.17, development agreements, as well as the Downtown Specific Plan, Chapter 10, Land Use Regulations. The purpose of these amendments for the Land Use and Development Code updates are to clarify standards and administrative procedures, update formatting, add definitions, remove duplicative terms, add additional minor requirements for development, and implement general plan and housing element programs. And as for the downtown specific plan, the purpose of these amendments this amendment is to change the entitlement required from conditional use permit to minor use permit for office uses along pedestrian priority frontages. Significant updates include designating a zoning district consistent with the agricultural buffer general plan designation, adding standards for telecommunication facilities, allowing an increase in density for infill development, reducing outdoor recreation space standards for certain residential development types, establishing requirements for vacant and abandoned properties, and adding setback and noise control requirements for construction. The Solano County Airport Land Use Commission met on October 9th, 2025, and requested a minor addition that density bonuses don't conflict with the Nut Tree and Travis Airport plans, and staff incorporated the condition. The Planning Commission held a meeting on November 18th, 2025 to discuss the proposed amendments. The commission had one question regarding a provision in the update which allows a reduction in open space for certain residential types. Staff clarified that this was an existing incentive, and the housing element called for this incentive to also be applied to multifamily, mixed-use, and affordable housing developments. To conclude, the proposed amendments create consistency with the general plan and zoning ordinance, clarify standards and administrative procedures, update requirements with user-friendly formatting, add or modify definitions and remove duplicative terms, add additional minor requirements for development, implement housing element programs within the required time frame, and allow ground floor office uses along pedestrian priority frontages within the downtown specific plan area with a lesser planning entitlement. And the recommendation is by simple motion, first, to adopt a resolution reaffirming the Vacaville General Plan Final Environmental Impact Report, or FEIR for short, and final supplemental EIR, and concluding that no subsequent EIR is required pursuant to Section 15162 of the California Environmental Quality Act, guidelines for the 2025 Annual Land Use and Development Code. 2, to adopt a resolution reaffirming the adoption of the Downtown Specific Plan addendum to the General Plan Update Environmental Impact Report and the 2021 supplement to the General Plan EIR. Third is to introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Vacaville, amending Title 14 of the Vacaville Municipal Code by updating Division 14.02, entitled Interpretations and Definitions, Division 14.09, entitled Zoning, and Division 14.17, entitled Development Agreements, as shown in Attachment 4. Sorry, I'm not sure if the attachment number aligns, but the fourth item is to introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Vacaville amending Chapter 10 of the Downtown Specific Plan entitled Land Use Regulations. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you. This was clearly at first, it was like, okay, what is the true intent here? But once I read through it a second time, a lot of it made more sense as far as what we're trying to do here tonight. I did have a question that I had discussed. I don't know if we ended up with that answer. Because one of it is it's making some minor changes, but sometimes when we make minor changes, in the details is something in the fine print that could catch you off guard. And I found one. I don't know. Did we answer that one?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. So our Community and Economic Development Director did respond to me about the 0.5 parking space versus 1, if you want to talk about it, or if staff can talk about it.
Yes, I can speak to that.
Sure, yeah.
So the reduction in the parking requirement from 1 space per unit to half a space, or 0.5 per unit, was a requirement from the Housing Element Program, HE 19A. And the purpose of the change was to encourage more housing by reducing the amount of parking needed on site, which would allow developers to have more space for additional units. The amount of required parking is calculated by multiplying the required number of spaces per unit by the number of studio or 1-bedroom units. So for example, if there were 10 studio units, you would multiply 10 by 0.5, so there would be 5 required parking spaces. And again, currently the ratio is 1-to-1, so if there were 10 studio units, then there would be 10 parking spaces required.
Okay, and it's something we've already adopted anyway. This is just clarifying the language. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's unfortunate sometimes because it becomes a problem elsewhere, right? We try to solve housing and then we create parking problems. So, all right, I appreciate that. I don't see any other questions. I'm going to open up to the public for any comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. I'll accept your motion to approve.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. I had to try because, every time there's a change, people will look at the council and say, you did that. So, we'll go ahead and move on. Madam City Clerk.
Okay, item 11B is also a resolution reaffirming prior actions and an ordinance of the City Council repealing and replacing section of the Vacaville Municipal Code related to accessory dwelling units to bring it into alignment with state code. And again, Demir Powell, our associate planner, will be presenting.
In 2025, the state of California signed new legislation regarding accessory dwelling units. These are shown on screen and include AB 462, which modifies some permitting requirements in coastal zones and procedures for certificates of occupancy. AB 1154 allows property owners for JADUs, junior accessory dwelling units, to reside off-site if the JADU has its own sanitation facilities. It also prohibits JADUs for short-term rentals. Lastly, SB 9 and SB 543 have some more significant updates. They provide some clarification on how livable space is defined and used for the calculation of certain standards, and also clarify the number of ADUs that are allowed with various types of development. For example, 2 detached ADUs are allowed with the proposed multifamily dwelling. There was some confusion before when regulating these items, so legislation makes these matters more clear and specific. The bills also exempt ADUs and JADUs under certain sizes from development impact fees and school impact fees. And lastly, the bills add a new requirement to determine the incompleteness of an application or resubmittal within 15 days. Incompleteness is also required to be determined for appeals within 60 days. Given these updates to the state legislation, staff are seeking to implement a zoning text amendment to repeal and replace our ADU ordinance to incorporate language and requirements from the new state legislation. We're seeking to repeal and replace the existing ordinance rather than just amending the text so that we can also make minor formatting and structural improvements to the ordinance. We're incorporating best practices from other jurisdictions that we've seen, including things like a definition section to define terms related to this section, the organization of the approval process, adding a reference to the city's pre-approved ADU program, and adding information regarding impact fees and utility fees that may be required for ADUs. The Planning Commission held a meeting on December 16th, 2025 to consider the proposed amendments and staff analysis. The commission voted unanimously to approve the proposed amendments. And to conclude, the proposed zoning text amendment implements the 2025 state legislation and incorporates user-friendly formatting and organizational improvements. AB 462 took effect immediately, and the remaining bills took effect on January 1st, 2026. And the city's ADU ordinance must comply with state legislation or be deemed null and void. And the recommendation is to, by simple motion, first, adopt a resolution reaffirming the Vacaville General Plan Final EIR and Final Supplement EIR, and concluding that no subsequent EIR is required pursuant to Section 15162 of the California Environmental Quality Act, guidelines for the accessory dwelling unit ordinance amendment. And second, introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Vacaville, amending Title 14 of the City of Vacaville Municipal Code by repealing and replacing Section 14.09.270.040 accessory dwelling units. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, thanks. I don't have any questions. Councilmember Wiley?
Thanks for the information, and I know that ADUs and junior ADUs are kind of where the state is trying to take us, and a lot of other people in our developments, we have a lot of those standalones now for rent. I just wondered, on the size of the ADUs specified, is there some restriction on the number of people who can live in those ADUs? I think there is, but is there?
I think so.
I'm going to call our city attorney to the stand.
Well, that's inverted. I'm going to call you to the stand. I got it.
Good evening. So yes, and actually it would be great if our fire marshal was here, because a lot of it is just related to square footage of the rooms, how many people can exist in. I think it's like 1 person per 50 square foot or something like that, but it has to do with the living space that's available and how many people the state fire code or the local code says can fit into that space. So there are some restrictions on that. It's similar to how we would treat any other residential dwelling unit.
And then the landlord is responsible for enforcing that and knowing how many people are in the ADU or junior ADU?
Yes, and a lot of them are not, I guess I'll just say anecdotally, many of the ADUs are not rental products. They're typically for family members to live in or friends of the family or something like that. So we have not encountered many issues with that. But yes, if an issue were to arise, it would be a landlord-tenant issue.
And the same thing, do they require parking, or is there no parking required?
It depends on the size of the ADU. Our code tries to hopefully makes that clear when parking is required. In some cases, yes, is my recollection of the new language, but I'll see if Demir has anything else to say on it.
Is it half a parking space?
One paved off-street parking space is required for each ADU or bedroom, whichever is less. And there are exceptions when an ADU is located within a half mile of public transit, if it's in a historic district, if the ADU is part of the proposed or existing primary residence or accessory structure, and several other exceptions there.
Exceptions, they come directly out of the state law. So we haven't really gone over and above, but we had to incorporate anything the state said must be in our ordinance. Otherwise, the whole of the ordinance cannot exist. So the parking requirements come straight out of state law.
Okay. And then just another question. Looking at the information, it was talking about, if it's this big, then you can have four multi-units and things like that. So to me, it sounded like you could have a house or subdivide it, and it would be like apartments, but they would be calling it ADU. So could it be the same thing as just like subdividing your property into separate apartments?
Functionally, yes, to some extent. Although junior ADUs, which always exist within the footprint of the home, cannot be rented separately from the home. And so...
what do you mean they cannot be rented separately from the home?
If it's a junior ADU, which means it's under a certain square footage and it's part of the house, you can't, it's not considered a separate conveyance, that you could rent out just the space inside the home. Do we have I think we have language in there on the separate conveyance section that might be helpful on that. But yes, to some extent, the HCD guidelines on ADUs says what the mix and match situation is, basically, of the standalone ADUs, the attached ADUs, the detached ADUs. You can convert a garage or an attic, things like that. So some units are not able to be separately conveyed, and I think that's if they're under a certain square footage and part of the home.
Are you talking for sale or for rent, or either one?
Either.
Because it said that, I think it took away the requirement that it had to be owner occupied. So I don't see how they could say
Maybe it is just for sale, not separate conveyance. Now that you say that, it may be that I think the state removed the obligation to have the unit that is part of the home be occupied by the owner. That was a pre-existing requirement.
Taken off. So,
but separate conveyance, I think it can't be sold separately from the main unit is what you're asking.
Right, but you could rent out the main unit and rent out the junior ADU.
Exactly.
Because you couldn't do that before. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was the clarification. The JADU may not be sold separately from the primary dwelling.
Right. Okay, and then the last question is just about power to an external ADU, because that came up, and I won't go into all the details, but so the city doesn't have anything to do with the power. The owner of the property would have to work that out with PG&E, correct?
Yes. Well, I will say the ADUs get inspected for safety, fire safety, things like that. So if a situation like that existed at the time of the inspection, I'm sure that our inspection team would catch that and identify it as an issue. If it's happening after the fact, then yes, again, a landlord-tenant issue. If it's brought to our attention, we can go out and inspect again or enforce, just like we do with any other residential issues. But that specific situation that you're mentioning, if it wasn't there at the time of the inspection, I would say that's a landlord-tenant issue.
Because I think PG&E made additional requests for more power to the ADU than they had in the first place. So then they had to, go back and rework everything. But I didn't think it was a city issue as much as a PG&E issue. Okay, and then, so in the city per Vacaville, do we have very many just residents adding ADUs, or are most of our ADUs in the big developments where they're having the developments like whatever it is out at District 6 and Montessa and things like that?
Yeah, so we'll actually be bringing to the next council meeting a Celebrate Housing report that'll have the details with the actual data. But most of the ADU development that we're seeing currently is coming from the big developments. I believe they account for about 90%.
And they're all for rent?
Yes.
Yes. And then the last question, which I should know, these do or do not count for arena numbers? They do, don't they? They do count for arena even if they're rental?
Yes, and it depends, of course. They only help us, for example, with the low-income arena units if they are deed restricted affordable. Some of them are, some of them are not.
Most of them are not, probably.
We have a number in, I think it's Montesa that has a relatively high number that are actually deed restricted affordable that we will count towards our lower income units.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I will open up to the public for any comment on this item. All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for any discussion or motion.
I want to say something. Did you want to say something? No, yes, Tamara. Oh, okay. Thought I saw your hand. Okay.
Motion to approve? Second, we have a motion second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The only thing that I would suggest is that, on our website, that we provide really good information. The public sometimes doesn't know where to look until there's an unmet expectation. So if there's a way that we can educate that, like impact fees under 750, but if you built it and it's 751, you're going to be paying an impact fee. So I think there's things we can do to educate what this looks like to the public and use our website. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to business.
So item 12A is a resolution for consideration of the City of Vacaville approving a service fee for credit card payments, and Finance Director Ken Matsumiya is here to do the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. As mentioned, tonight's agenda item is seeking council approval to implement a service fee to recover the costs related to processing credit card payments. So currently, the city absorbs costs associated with credit card and e-payment processing for all systems except for community development's permitting software, Track It. These fees include credit card company fees, payment processor fees, bank fees, which average around $400,000 annually citywide. As council may recall, about a year ago to the day, we took the first step in implementing this e-payment pass-through model with our community development permitting software, Track It. This has resulted in a reduction of expenses of $30,000 to $50,000 annually. Then as mentioned, however, for the remainder of the city, we still incur around $400,000 citywide in payment processing fees for credit cards. So this following slide kind of shows all the different systems we use throughout the city. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but we'll highlight kind of some of the bigger ones. And so as an example, for our parks and recreation registrations, we use a software called Civic Rec. The processing fee for credit cards are about 1.9 to 2.13% of kind of the sales price. And then the annual cost of the city's general fund is a little under $63,000. If we look at kind of further down on the list, HDL Prime is used for our business license and our hotel tax or TOTs. And so for those online payments, it's kind of a range going from 0.02% to 3%. That costs us around $30,000 a year. And then the largest item on this list is related to our utility billing or online payment portal, so InfoSend. And so our average processing fee for that is about 1.8%. As you can see, it's the largest item here. It's around $232,000 that we pay for that a year. And so this evening, council is being asked to approve the following proposed change to our credit card processing practice, which would pass these payment processing fees up to 3% to the customer. Any costs above 3% would continue to be absorbed by the city. This fee structure would cover the cost of accepting credit card payments for a majority of the city's payment processors that I showed on the previous slide, and it's in line with convenience fees that most government agencies charge, which range from about 2.25% to 3.5%. The city would continue to accept cash and check payments at City Hall with no fee. And then we would also, or we intend to offer the option of continue to pay online via ACH or e-check without a fee, especially for utility billing. But this does require further analysis and conversation with the payment systems and whether they'd be able to separate processing fees for credit cards versus e-check and ACH. And just in practice, an example of this would be for utility billing or online payment. If you've kind of gone in and you're set up for automatic payment or try to make an online payment, there's the option of paying either with a credit card or paying with linking your bank, your checking account, savings account. And so the credit card payment option would be the one where we'd be passing up passing on those fees up to 3%. The banking transfer option would be the free option, so we would still retain an ability to make an online payment and not incur a fee. So given the different software platforms and processors used by the city, implementing this e-payment pass-through model will require further time for staff to work with our vendors and modify our payment processes, negotiate fee rates, and then complete testing. If this item is approved this evening, then implementation would be phased, beginning no earlier than May 1st of 2026. And then we don't anticipate being able to switch every system over. We saw the number of payment processors. We have over 10, and so this would be kind of a staggered implementation, and not everything would go live as of May 1st. And then finally, and most importantly, public outreach would occur as soon as assuming this item is approved by council, and we would work with our public relations manager and her team on education and public outreach. And with that, the recommendation is by simple motion, adopt the subject resolution, and be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I don't see any questions. I'll go ahead and open up to the public for any comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes. Thank you, Ken, for the presentation. So on the e-payment and pay by check, I heard that you were talking about education, so I'm concerned about the people who may have difficulties using that process. So maybe if you could just elaborate a little bit on what our help process would be for elderly or people that are technologically challenged, you know, for these types of, to make it really easy. I mean, it seems easy, but I just, I called on getting my dishwasher repaired this morning, something very easy, and after 3 hours on the phone, I think I have an appointment for sometime in the year 2037. So something that you think would be easy is not necessarily easy, so if we could just, I really just want to make sure that this is user-friendly. So if you could elaborate on that a little.
Sure. And so this would be something that we would definitely work with our public relations manager on. I think some of the stuff that, for example, utility billing is an option is we have the call center where if you were to call into our utility billing call center, we can walk you through that or a customer through that. We've also explored kind of the use of videos. And so, you can go to the website and actually be guided if it's kind of easier to follow somebody like YouTube or something of that nature, where you actually can see this is how you make an online payment. If you want to go with a bank transfer, this is how you would set that up. If you wanted to still use a credit card payment, this is how that would work. And we also have in-person service as well. And so if they're able to make it to City Hall and they kind of want more of that in-person assistance, we're here as well at the front counter.
So we have some very patient employees that are willing to work with the public.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point, though, because many times when terms of an agreement change, a lot of times we're having to read the fine print, hit click, and say, yes, we understand. And so to the best of our ability, we need to make sure that people don't feel off guard, even if we're trying to do this well. Councilmember Ritchie.
Thank you so much. So I'm very supportive of this, but just when I was reviewing this, just one group really just increased costs. Like I think absolutely has to happen is like a catch up with the rest of cities and counties and just the whole region. Really, we're not doing it. But for people that are on fixed income, maybe is there a way in which if they cannot make it down to City Hall to make their cashier's payment, cashier's check or payment, is there a way to identify, like, say, John Doe, XYZ Street, their account number is 944, it's all fake, but is there a way for you to check so you know, hey, that person is on the list of, that has a certain fee to be reduced so they wouldn't have to pay a fee higher than they were before if they're on a fixed income below a certain income level? Is there a way to identify that so their payment, the cost for them wouldn't go?
Sure. I think if we're speaking again, I'm just going to relate it to utility billing. Like we do have kind of CARES, which is a program that's offered where I guess we could do some identification that way. Also, if customers don't want to incur that online payment fee, that's where we are wanting to keep that ACH bank transfer option with no cost. And so similar to, I think PG&E has the same setup. If you look at DMV, when you're registering or renewing your registration online, you can choose to use a credit card, but you can also go the bank transfer route, and there's no fee for that. And so I think, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but the bank transfer is kind of where we're trying to retain that being a no-fee option.
Vice Mayor Silva?
I just want to just appreciate that we, staff considered different options of, to minimize the cost of our ability to give money, to spend money. So I just always find it interesting, like if there's always going to be a direct cost or indirect cost to pay money that, so it's just, you can't really get away around it. But to me, it makes sense to implement this process. It's something that's standard across many different groups. And again, I appreciate the different options that reduce the cost to our citizens, and that's what we got to keep in mind. So a motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Before we move on, Councilmember Wiley, any discussion?
Just a quick question. When we first started taking credit cards for everything, they said it really does save staff time because then the staff don't have to worry as much. So will this change have any effect on staff time?
So we're hoping not. I mean, I think the whole part of the bank transfer, and we kind of looked at the data as well. Not everybody, when they use the online payment system currently, uses a credit card, and we have a good portion that use the bank transfer option as well. And so I think we don't think that kind of by shifting this route that we're going to see a whole lot of people kind of coming to City Hall to make their payments that way or to start mailing in checks again. Like, we don't want to go back in time. We definitely want to continue to utilize online payments. So we don't foresee that happening.
So would you say about half the people pay by a credit card, or do you have any idea?
Yeah, so for utility billing, for those that use the online payment option, it's about 56% that use credit cards, and then the 44% that use actually bank transfers currently. When you're looking at something like TOT for business or for TOT payments, a lot of the hoteliers, a majority of them actually go the bank transfer route as opposed to using a credit card. So it kind of, not every system's the same, but we do kind of see a mix of both.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and move on to item 12C. Madam City Clerk.
B.
Is it B? It is B. Sorry.
So this is session 2.
Paying attention.
This is session 2 of our business license tax modernization study. And Leslie Hoover, our Assistant Finance Director, along with Ken Matsumiya and their consultant are here to present.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back with you again to present some updated and additional information. I'll briefly go over the background material once again to kind of refresh our recollection, and then touch on the models that are involved here today for the business license tax study. And then I'll be turning the time over to Leslie, who's prepared some more detailed examples, I think, for council's consideration this evening as well. So to sum up, where is the city now with its current tax structure? The revenues are relatively flat at around 440,000, 430, somewhere right around there. They've had a little bit of an uptick lately, but they're relatively flat. Business counts are also relatively stable, as you can see with this graphic. And the current structure with both the current structure has what I'd characterize as some unnecessary complexity. It's a holdover from the fact that the original structure was adopted
think back in 1977, with some changes made most recently in 2000, if I remember correctly. And so you've got about 32 rate types, and about 80% of your businesses fall in those top four: contractor, service, retail, wholesale, manufacturing, and professional. So you've got quite a bit of complexity that's added into your current structure at the moment. A fair amount of diversity in your structure right now. Again, largely that's impacted by the sort of number and diversity of the rates that are, you've got 32 different rates, and so the revenue is reported out in some of those areas. Excuse me. Here's, I think, a pretty interesting look at the current structure. So if we look at the green section in both of these charts, on the left is the percent of total reported employees, which is the dominant way of reporting the amount of business activity under your current structure. And on that left, you can see that your top 100 businesses account for nearly 24% of all the employees that are reported in the city under the business license tax. If you look immediately to the right, you will see that those same top 100 businesses pay less than 10%, roughly 10%, of the actual taxes that are imposed. And that has a lot to do with the cap structure that's currently in place. So I think this is a pretty telling visual for how the current system is working right now. Now, how does that compare to cities in your region that might be of interest to you as decision makers? Well, you can see, and I'll focus your attention, if you don't mind, right in the middle of this chart. There's a column that's titled Revenue Per Capita. And if you take a look at that and kind of scroll down that, of all the comparison cities, Vacaville is far and away the lowest in terms of the amount of revenue it's generating per resident here in the city, which obviously has a direct impact on funding services, et cetera, since this is general fund money. You can also see right next to that, revenue per business is also significantly lower across the board for Vacaville. And so you've got currently a system that has, well, to put it bluntly, your peer cities are collecting. There we go. Sorry about that. Both per resident and per business, right? So there's room for some opportunity to be able to improve the tax structure and the results that are coming from that tax structure.
And then I'll just add as a note, we said this last time, but Fairfield, the numbers we have here from 2023, the census data, but they have since increased their business license tax. So they're pulling in an additional million. So they're about 2.7 million or 23.79 revenue per capita, or 471.86 revenue per business at the current moment.
Thank you, Leslie. Here again, you can sort of see the impact of having something like a cap and the speed limit. If you look at Vacaville, there's a climb and then a flattening back out of the revenue at a time when regionally you've had fairly significant economic growth, at least over the last several years. And you can see some of that in some of the other cities. But in particular, Vacaville, you can see the impact of that cap sort of flattening out the top end of your growth. Let's go ahead to the jurisdictions. Now we'll take a look then briefly at a number of jurisdictions in detail. So Fairfield, Napa, and Vallejo, to give you even more detail on that. So I direct your attention to these hypothetical business scenarios here, and I'm going to kind of walk you through 3 of them. There's more there, obviously. Number 2 on the list from the top is beauticians. And if we assumed a small salon, maybe making 25,000, and again, these are all hypothetical, they're made up numbers, they don't represent any specific business. With a single employee, right now in Vacaville, they would be paying the $50. In Fairfield, 55, in Napa, 25, and in Vallejo, 96. Right? Just to give you a rough comparison of what that business, that hypothetical business would pay. Again, and just to touch on something that Leslie's going to go into more detail on, that's just the business license tax. It doesn't include the excise or any BID or anything like that, which is why you'll see some slightly different numbers in a moment. Let's look then halfway down roughly under small cafe is automotive repair. What would an automotive repair business in these jurisdictions be asked to pay in their tax? So right now about $100 if they're bringing in about 500,000 with 8 employees. Again, as we read across there, Fairfield would be $667 compared to the $100 here. Napa would be 500 and Vallejo would be 336. And then finally, the large retailer at the very bottom of this chart, again, assuming about a $15 million for that, that could be a decent size grocery store, for example. That wouldn't be uncommon around that range. They would be paying right now in the city of Vacaville the 300, and then in Fairfield 3,246. Napa up to 15,000 because they would go into the highest tier in Napa, and then from Vallejo 4,758. So you can see that the city's cap is really constraining the revenue from some of these larger businesses. We'll go ahead and skip past the next 2. Those are just backup information of what the actual rates were that we applied in order to generate the slide that we just touched on. I will note that home-based businesses have some specific rules here in Vacaville. Generally, there's sort of 3 buckets that they fall into. One would be exempt. If they have gross receipts of $1,000 or less, they're exempt from the business license tax. The models that I'm going to present in just a minute preserve that exemption. They don't touch that exemption at all. The home-based businesses with gross receipts from $1,000 to $2,500 pay at a reduced rate. In the models that I'm presenting, they would now pay the minimum tier. So it would touch those businesses. There are about 100 of those overall. Okay, it's about 187 that are currently exempt, and then about 100 that are paying on the reduced rate at the moment. And that would be, as you'll see, either $50 or $40 at that lowest tier. And then home-based businesses with gross receipts exceeding $2,500 currently pay the standard business license tax, and that would continue. So those are the 3 buckets. Those are the different treatments. And then home-based businesses pay a one-time permit fee of $130 in addition to the business license tax, which is not really accounted for in how we build the models, but we wanted to point that out to council. So based on the direction from last time, we focused on 2 variations of the tiered flat rate model, using a gross receipts measure rather than a per employee measure with a small minimum tax and keeping 2 categories, a category A for professionals and advanced services, and then everybody else. And so we've got that 2-pronged structure. Go ahead there. So we've brought forward tonight two options. This first, as you'll see, the tiers, the first tier is 0 to 50,000. Category A is the advanced or professional services. You see the slightly higher rates at each tier. And then category B is everybody else, literally every other business. And you've got the tiering at these lower levels under $1 million, these flat rates that are pretty predictable for the businesses to understand. And then above $1 million, you've got a pretty competitive, quite low rate proposed at either 50 cents per thousand or 25 cents per thousand, which keeps you in a pretty competitive range with others like Napa and Vallejo, who have some lower rates as well. The second option, very similar structure, same thresholds, but it's half the top end rate. So instead of 50 and 25 cents, we now have 25 cents on category A, which is your professional and service, advanced services. And then category B has 12 cents, 12 and a half cents per thousand for all the other businesses at that top end tier. So that's over $1 million. And the rates are lower on the way up as well, the tiers. No, excuse me, they're the same. It's just the top rate that drops. So tiered flat gross receipts, two different structures. Probably the main features to keep in mind, you've got flat amounts for businesses that are generating 1 million or less in revenue. If they're over 1 million, then you have a flat tax plus this category A and category B structure with either 50 and 25 cents for option 1 as the top end rate. Again, 50 or 25 cents per thousand, or for option 2, 25 cents or 12 and a half cents per thousand. Now, as you can see, Fairfield right now with their current rate structure, they've got a threshold of $1 million as well, and they are running at between 16 and a half and 11 and a half cent structure in their AB structure. Napa has a sort of single threshold at about 1.5 million, and they drop to 10 cents per thousand there. And then Vallejo, starting at 500,000, has sort of a regressive tax structure where the rate drops from 55 cents to all the way down to 20 cents for the top tier in Vallejo. So bottom line is that the rates being proposed in these models fit within what your peers are doing in the region in terms of threshold and competitive rate. So what would we expect revenue-wise? Well, again, these are models, but what we look at revenue-wise here for option 1, that's the 50 and 25 cent at the top tier. You've got about an additional 2.4 million in potential general fund revenue for the city. For option 2, again, we've halved those top rates. And so you see a drop, and that's about 1.6 million in additional revenue there that we would model from that. I'm going to go ahead and skip this slide because I think Leslie's next few slides actually do a nicer job of putting some real detail into some examples around the impact of these different models to specific businesses. Leslie?
Thanks, Eric. So in these next 4 slides, I'm going to go through some examples, and there's 2 scenarios per slide. And so we wanted to show the business license base and then what it looks like over the million. And then as Eric mentioned before, when businesses renew their or apply or renew their business license, it includes the excise fee for Vacaville, which is specific to us. So I have that in here as well, so we can see the all-in cost that a business would pay under the new rates. So this first sample is a small cafe or a coffee shop with 3 employees and about 300,000 in gross receipts. The first scenario is one that we would find maybe in the bid, so downtown in Zone A. Currently, based off of 3 employees, they're going to pay $75 in the business license base. Under the 2 options for Vacaville, they'll still fall within a tiered, it's just at a higher rate of the 210. So that's not going to change for either option. And then in Fairfield, they're currently paying their tiers at $462. So with the bid fee, we're looking at $256 for the bid, and that goes to the bid. It's not something that stays with the city. We just collect it on their behalf. And then the excise fee is based off of employee count as well. And so based off of 3 employees, they would pay $60. So the all-in is $391 right now for somebody that's in the bid, compared to $526 under either option with the new models, and then $462 in Fairfield currently. And again, the large part of that is actually the bid fee. So the scenario below is no bid fee. So everything's the same except taking out the bid. So then we go from $391 currently to $135 under the current scenario for Vacaville. Either option would be $270 because they will be in the tiers, compared to $462 in Fairfield currently. This next slide is a supermarket, which is category B, or service retail. And so the large supermarket here, you could think of a chain grocery store that a lot of cities have. And so somebody with 115 employees pulling in about 15 million in gross receipts. That top line for the base, currently they pay off of the employee, which is $300. Either option, they would fall within the tiers for up the first million, which is the 525. Fairfield, their tier is higher at 936. When you get to line 2, that's anything over the million. And so applying that multiplier is $3,500 under option 1, half of that $1,750 under option 2. And Fairfield at the 16.5 cents is $2,310. So when just looking at the business license altogether, it's $300 currently, about just over $400,000 under option 1, over $200 or $2,000 under option 2, and then Fairfield's just over $3,000. Again, if we add in our excise fee for Vacaville, that's based off of 115 employees, that caps out at $600. So right now, someone is paying $900 all inclusive compared to $4,625, or the $2,875, or when looking at Fairfield is $3,246. So all of those options, except for option 1, is still under Fairfield, even with the excise fee. The scenario below is a small supermarket. And so you could think of this as like a mom and pop supermarket, something that's not a chain. And so with 64 employees and $2 million in gross receipts, the top line, they currently pay $275 in business license. They would cap out again at the $525 under the tier. Same with Fairfield. So we're at $275 or $775 option 1, or $650 option 2, compared to Fairfield's just over $1,000. Even when you add in our excise tax at $300 based off of the employees, they're currently paying $575 all in, or $1,075, or the $950, which is still under Fairfield's $1,101. The next example we have is the warehouse category. It's a service or a retail, and this could be a warehouse manufacturer. The top example here is something that you would see maybe out in biotech, a large manufacturer with 800 employees or 80 million in gross receipts. Currently, they cap out with the employees at $500 in business license. The tier would keep them in the 525 range under both models, and it's $585 in Fairfield. If you add the multiplier over the $1 million, you have that $19,750 under option 1, or half of 9,875 option 2. Fairfields, they do have 3 categories, and so their rate is a little bit lower here at the 11.5 cents. So their over the million is $9,085. Business license total 500 compared to 20, just over 10 or just under 10 for Fairfield. You add in our excise tax, they're capped out right now at paying $1,100. Just over $20,000 with option 1, $11,000 with option 2, compared to $9,670 with Fairfield. The model below is a smaller warehouse manufacturer with just 150 employees and smaller gross receipts at $6 million. And so that rate is lower there at the 300. The tiers stay the same. It's just that multiplier that changes. So the all-in for that one is 900 currently compared to 2,375 option 1, or 1,750 option 2 compared to 1,100 with Fairfield. The last example we have for you is in the professional category. And so we have an accountant as the first example. So this is one employee. We have 150 gross receipts. So that could be someone that's doing an in-home business. Currently, they pay $75 in business license. They would fall within the tiers under the same for each, both models, the 185 compared to Fairfield's tier at 365. With the excise tax of $15 per one person, they're currently paying $90 versus $200 under either model, compared to the 365 with Fairfield. And then the scenario below is just a larger professional firm with 30 employees and $2 million in gross receipts. I won't go through all of them, but just the grand total for that is 405 now compared to 1,405 or 1,155 compared to Fairfield's 2,291. So there's just some of the examples of the different scenarios of what businesses in Vacaville would realistically look at with rate increases. I will turn it over to Ken to go over recommendations and next steps.
Thanks, Leslie. I know there's a lot of information and data that was presented this evening. And tonight, we're not looking for any sort of formal action or direction on whether or not to move forward with a tax measure and placing that on the ballot related to our business license tax. What we are looking for this evening is, of the scenarios that were presented, of the 2 options, your feedback on that, and of the 2 options presented, if there was a preferred kind of option of the 2 that we went over this evening. At the next council meeting, there will be an agenda item presenting the initial polling results from the voter survey that was done a couple of months ago. And it would be after that meeting where we would be looking for direction from council on whether the timing is right to move forward with placing a tax measure or tax measures on the ballot. Concurrently, we, in addition to this revenue analysis and these scenarios, we've also been working with HCL on updating our ordinance, which, as mentioned, has not been updated for a significant amount of time. And so kind of depending on where council decides to go with the tax measure, the ordinance update will be coming back to council separately for the update through a public hearing or as part of a ballot measure. And so those are kind of the immediate steps, and then the ordinance being something that's going to be something, further down the road in April or May.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It is numbers intensive, I get it. So hopefully, if I understood you correctly, though, the only action tonight, other than just receiving this, is if there is preference from this council in a majority as far as of the 2. That's really the only direction you're looking for tonight. Vice Mayor Silva.
Yeah, a lot of data. Notice an attachment. We talked about this before. Given more time to digest it. I just have a hard time fielding questions about, when businesses, small businesses particularly, budget for a set amount, then I understand it's something that has to go on a ballot. People choose that. I think the question is, well, what are we raising money for? So I know that I brought that up before, but I think, as far as like taxpayers go, I think most people just need to understand if we're raising taxes, are we just raising it because, or what is it actually contributing to? So I can't emphasize enough how important that is, especially if we're talking about going to something about it to get public support to put this on the shoulders of our small businesses. Now that said, I often hear, and this is really a call to our business community, that Vacaville can be business unfriendly. Looking at this data, it suggests that the fees for many of those categories are significantly lower than what is throughout the surrounding region. So I think part of that discussion also should include helping staff and council understand what exactly are the pain points that may make Vacaville business unfriendly. So a couple questions I have more direct is, I saw the amounts, the suggested amounts at reduced rates or no fees. Can there be other options presented that look at how best to set business, particularly startup businesses, up to not fall within that high fail rate within the first 3 years? Maybe that's associated with some type of discount. So can that also be associated, if there is an opportunity for that, to connect that with some type of formal training, maybe perhaps provided by small business, SBDC, small business, what's the D for? Small. Yeah, development centers, SBDC, normally it's federally funded. But maybe there's something that's in there to ensure that particularly our folks who are pulling money out of their 401ks or whatever it is don't lose it within that first 3 years, to limit, to increase their success rate. So that's I know you guys don't have that. I don't imagine you would have that question, an answer to that question today. So I'm also curious to know, what is the success rates for those other areas that have those higher rates? I imagine that might be hard to tease out that information. But if there's any type of data out there that, when we're looking at certain cities that's bringing in $4 million a year compared to our just under 400,000, how is that setting their business up to succeed, or maybe have more trouble succeeding? And if it's in certain categories, certain areas, I'm curious to know if we can tease out that information. I think generally, I know we want big businesses to come here. There's value in that, but I think we have to be very conscious of balancing the support of our ability to recruit and keep larger businesses, larger corporations at the expense of smaller businesses. So it's a combination of questions and comments.
Councilmember Ritchie.
All right, okay, sorry. Sometimes the voice happens. So I'll try to make quick points kind of succinct and easy. As I pay this fee myself every year since I moved here, I'm in support of option one. And my reason isn't really hypothetical or assumption. It's based on my own company, my own business. Anything over zero, I guarantee 100% of small businesses and medium business, large businesses are going to complain. They don't want to pay anything. Like, no one wants to pay anything. But being a small business owner and now being a elected official, understanding both sides of the aisle, I see where the money goes now. Like, I see the value of walking outside, having clean streets and safe environment. I see the investment that when I write that check, and it is pitifully small compared to like other cities, where that money goes to, like it's a part of the system to make sure Vacaville is safe, clean, and the business that we run in the city has the ability to keep the doors open and a level of safety. I think the story is not told. Like, yeah, it is a cost, but the cost that we pay for that fee is ridiculous. I mean, 1977, it is small. And I think every business owner, honestly, when they walk in, they know it. Like, they know it. They know their fee is less than it should be, and no one likes change. And if he has to pay $1 extra, they're going to piss and moan. So I think I could be a fortune teller. I know it's going to come in 2 weeks. It's going to be negativity, but we have to get past that. And like, it's our job to be stewards and make sure we look out for not just small business owners, but the community at large. And the community is our main job. I'm a small business owner, and you have to. It's a team effort. I want to have clean streets. I don't want to have people, bums, and problems outside I want to make sure it's safe. None of this is free. I think people need to understand, like, the selfishness is not want to pay $1 extra, but they want the police to come. They want to make a call and resolve the problem within 2 minutes, but they don't want to pay for it. So I think there's a gross entitlement of everyone wants something for free, and it's not that much of a cost. So I'm a supporter, number one, because I know exactly what's going to happen. People are going to complain, and they want no change. But this is a positive change. It's going to help our city kind of right the ship and allow us to provide services.
Councilmember Wiley?
Thanks for the information. Just a couple of questions. Like Leslie, on the very first slide, you corrected Fairfield, but is Fairfield numbers correct on all the other ones, or?
This is the correct number.
Right, so the only one that didn't get updated was the very first one where you said the Fairfield numbers were more.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yes.
Right, so then the other one, so those are accurate numbers
Yes.
for Fairfield. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And will you show you again the one that had all the cities besides Fairfield and Vallejo and Benicia or something? Because on all these, you're comparing them to Fairfield, so I just want to know, is Fairfield kind of in the middle and there were some higher and some lower? Or do we just pick Fairfield because they're next door, or? Okay, so then just looking at that, so then, and Richmond's not really close, but they're like really high. And Vallejo's 900, because Vallejo is quite a bit more than Fairfield. So when we were looking at these, so Vacaville would be significantly less than Vallejo if we had that as the choice, right? Because Vallejo's,
That's correct.
right.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
so-
Fairfield is a decent comparison for you because it's not the highest. And it had the recent change that was voter approved. And so it gives you a nice comparison. You don't want to be comparing to Richmond, who has some really high rates, for example, right? Benicia could be another comparison, but it's another cap. Right, so it's not going to give you a very good picture of what this structure could really do. So if I heard you correctly, Councilmember, yeah, I think Fairfield is a really nice comparison for you for those reasons.
That's why I wanted to see how that was. So that was that question. And then how often do the businesses pay their business tax? Is it once a year, or do they pay monthly, or?
Yes, it's annually.
And it's calculated on the previous year? So at the end of the year, they pay what it was for that. So one thing that if you're, when you're counting on number of employees, then as we're currently doing, they pay a certain fee. If you change it to gross receipts, a question came up about, so if you're a salon and you have 3 employees, your gross receipts are going to be a lot less than if you're a furniture store where you have a much bigger inventory and retail business, but you still might have a small number of employees. So that question was raised, how it's not exactly fair calculation if you change it. So can you just address that a minute?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. There's definitely a sense in which when you change the basis of the measure, right, you're going to change and upset people's expectations. But there's a couple of good reasons for that from my perspective. The first is that really the tax is not on how many people you employ, it's on your business activity. It's a tax on engaging in business. And this outdated structure assumes that the best way to measure that is by the number of people you employ, which means that you're automatically going to hit service businesses harder that have a higher, or any business that has a higher number of employees per dollar of output. The second is you can kind of think of gross receipts as like the economic footprint of the business. And if you're only measuring the labor input, you're not measuring the rest of that economic footprint. That larger business may have more travel on the roads, trucks that are coming in and tearing up your roads. There's more economic impact for both good and for some of the costs, right? For that larger business based on its actual economic activity, not just the number of people that it employs. And we see that in warehousing where we've seen more automation, for example, right? It's not inconceivable. It's now overseas right now, but we may see it in the United States where we have warehouses with no people in them. And if you continue to measure the business by the number of people, you're not future-proof in the way that you are with, okay, well, what's the economic footprint of this business? Did I answer your question?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. It's just hard for a person who has that kind of a business to understand why they have a huge increase if we go with one of these models. So, but I wanted to address the question, and you did address it. Thank you. And then on one of the slides, you talked about, if the money went to the P-bid or the D-bid or, downtown. And so it makes sense then that the business would see where the money's going because it's going back into the bid fee. So I think that it helps also Vice Mayor Silva's question, for people to understand where's the money going. It's going into the bid to help support the bid so that we can improve all the things so we can have a more lucrative businesses downtown or wherever they are. So, okay, so I think that's very good. And as far as option 1 or option 2, I think either one would be acceptable. I don't have really a preference. If you're trying to make it a little bit easier on people, then it would be option 2, but I think option 1's not outlandish.
Councilmember Stockton.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you going over the future proofing with AI and automation and all of the technological stuff that is happening and growing quickly. So thank you for bringing that up. I think for me, I don't hear a lot of people complain about our business license fees. What I hear them complain about, and especially the startup small businesses that are getting, trying to come here, is the sewer connection fee. And so I'm just curious if a similar conversation is happening among staff, because I agree. I want to find ways that we can entice businesses to come here and provide opportunity for, some of these smaller businesses to be able to have it, to be able to bring their business to Vacaville, right? And so while our fees may be small, when you add some of these additional factors, I think that's where I hear more of the complaints and concerns from different folks that are interested in doing business in Vacaville. So I'm curious if there is a metric similar to what you're using here that could be applied with that. I know that's not necessarily what we're talking about right today and what you've looked at, but I'm just trying to figure out if we are trying to make sure that we are not missing people who are trying to start a business in Vacaville, what kind of analysis can we look at, like you prepared here today, that would provide a more holistic approach in us trying to, to help them? Because I know they're different funds. I know there's different laws and rules around them, but that seems to be the biggest hurdle that I hear about with people wanting to do business here. Is it costs a tremendous amount of money to connect to our water sewer treatment facility. So is there a metric that we should be looking into to kind of go and coincide or partner up with what you're trying to adjust here? Because I think when businesses are starting to open, they're looking at how much money they have, what their startup fees are going to be. I don't necessarily think these fees are what's holding them back. I don't think it's unreasonable what you're proposing, but holistically, I think there are other factors that the council really needs to consider. If we're looking at addressing this, I think we should look at addressing some of those other things as well, if what we're really trying to do is recruit and retain good businesses here in Vacaville. So I don't know if that's something that we could look at or not. I know you're probably not prepared to talk about that today, but I do think that council is encouraged by trying to make sure that we're competitive, but that we're also welcoming and create these pathways where people have a realistic expectation about what it's going to cost to start their business and bring it here to Vacaville.
Did you have any comment on either of the two?
I see pros and cons to both. I think we need to look at and consider both. But again, I think it is more difficult when you're looking at some of these other fees on top of it. And so I kind of want to look at all of it before I make a decision on it. I don't think there's a great humongous difference between the two.
I can address that.
Yes, could you?
So I would like our Director of Utilities to come and talk about the sewer fees. There's multiple factors that goes into the fees for a business, depending on if it's a development, they're building a new building, that it comes into development impact fees and sewer and water fees, which are part of the water and sewer rate study. So, Justin?
Good evening, Mayor.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries. No, our connection fees are a challenge, and it is a concern that we have with a lot of businesses. And just so you're aware that connection fees go with the property or with the business. So if there's a restaurant, usually those are our high-end users, typically the ones that have the highest impact fees because they have the highest impact on the system. If somebody has or occupying a building that was a restaurant, their impact fees are zero. It's in the case of where you have something that's a retail business that had a low impact on the system, and then they're going to convert that into a higher use, like the restaurant. That's where they get hit with these higher impact fees. I know recently we had one of our staff members, and Aaron Morris complimented him on working with the Blue Lagoon Brewery, finding a place for them that was a restaurant that had already those impact fees paid on that facility. So they move in and their impacts are less.
Okay.
There are programs, I shouldn't say programs, there are ideas out there of when a shell is built, the builder pays as little impact fees as possible on that building. And then those fees are passed on to the business owner that moves into them. And maybe there's an opportunity when those shells are built that more impact fees are paid at that time, because that is one of the biggest hurdles. Like you said, like the sandwich shop we've heard about, opening it up and the amount of impact fees to the collection or the sewer system. And so we're aware too, those impact fees, they are a large majority of them go to pay off the loan that we have for the tertiary treatment facility that is now, I'm surprised to say, almost 10 years old. But that's like $7.2 million annually we pay for that facility.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah.
Councilmember Freeman.
Yes, thank you. I know on slide 10, if you would go there real quick, it was just comparing all the cities with Fairfield being relatively something that we should be looking at as a model. And then, I look at Richmond, and it was talking about the business license tax revenue is significantly lower than that of peer jurisdictions, including Vallejo, Napa, Fairfield, Benicia, and Richmond. So Richmond's quite a ways away, and I see they're at 16 million. So I got to imagine that has to do with the petrochemical business down in and around Richmond with Chevron and other companies like that. I'm just guessing. I'm not. You don't have to answer. But you had a comment that you had made is changing the basis of the measure, and I know that our city needs revenue. There's no doubt about it. And I understand what Councilman Ritchie was talking about regarding, clean streets, police showing up when you need them, paramedics showing up when you need them, street sweepers, just everything. But something that I haven't seen anywhere in here for, and this is what you brought up, the change of the basis of the measure. So what I haven't seen in here is the cost of making money. So what does it cost to make $1 million in these different categories? What does it cost these businesses? I think I hear say that, supermarkets run off of a 6% profit margin. Other businesses are more or less. I know, if you're doing really well in the business world and you're in the 17 to 20% gross profit range after everything's done is said, you're running a really successful operation. So that's one thing I don't see is what's the cost of money on these different businesses. And they all vary. I mean, depending on the type of business, if you have a automotive repair shop, you're paying hazmat fees to the county, based on how many tanks you have, how many drums you have on your facility. If you're a restaurant, it's a fog, fats, oil, and grease, water discharge,
hair salons, everybody's got a different basis of the measurement for their businesses in here. And so that's the thing I don't see. And, I keep talking about wanting to be the most business-friendly city in California. And how do we do that? Because ultimately, these costs, if we raise them, are going to be passed on to us, the consumers, right? Because a lot of businesses can't swallow more. And while I want to make sure that we have a great tax revenue, and I know we're running a deficit, I just don't see a lot of the details of the variety of businesses and what it costs these businesses to make dollars. So I'm not leaning towards any one of these at this point. Not yet, anyways. I mean, I have my ideas on it, but I just don't know that there's enough consideration for all that is already inflicted upon our business community with so many different responsibilities that they have, insurance and workman's comp, and that, one company's making $1 million a year, but they're spending $800,000 a year to make that million. Another company's making $1 million a year and they're spending $200,000 a year. And so there's that change of that basis of measurement that I'm concerned about. And I'm rambling now, so I'll stop because I know we all want to get out of here.
If you don't mind, I'll just point out two things in response. Those are great comments. The first is that the A/B split in these models is meant to try to address that to a certain degree. You've got a lower top end rate for those who are every other business. And so you've got some approximation right now in these models of trying to understand that cost of doing business is a little different. The other constraint to keep in mind is that in the state of California, only the state can tax net income. And so when you start pushing over into the boundary of taxing on the basis of what their profit margin is, you start running into state limitations on your ability to tax. And so we have to kind of stay in the gross receipts area. And it does have those concerns that you raised, but that's the area that the state has allowed locals to tax and not on net income. But we can still try to address some of that. And that's what you see with the AB is understanding that different businesses are operating on different models. So
thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Chapman.
Thank you. My comment is going to be brief. Thank you very much for the presentation and scenario 1 and 2. I can really, I'm supporting 1. The reason being, and I think as a business person and as a homeowner, just living, you realize you have to pay for what you get. And so the value, what are they receiving? They want to know why would we raise these fees? We are providing quality services to them. We want them to get that. And then what we're also willing to do is to assist them to improve their business, their product. And hearing what my council member, what Ted was sharing about the measurements, I think what you were looking more at is what would be used for them to price out a product, the pieces that are added to it, which is value added to the product for everything that they have to add onto something. So eventually they're going to end up increasing their, well, it wouldn't help them because then the next year, then their tax will be even higher based upon their revenue for the previous year. But I really feel that as a business person, they should look at what they have been charged over the years, how good Vacaville has been to them, really. And now it's time for us to catch up. Not only catch up, but to put in place what we see and what we know is needed for us to go forward and for other businesses to come in. I'm sure a new business coming in, they're going to look at neighboring communities and see what that cost would be for them if they lived in Fairfield, in Napa, and then look at what the community, what they're going to receive on the other end once they get here or get there. And it's just like if you're looking to move into a new community, you look at the schools, there are certain things you look for, crime rate, all of that. So, it all adds to the quality of life for them and for their residents, wherever they're located, wherever that business is located. Then we want that place to be clean. We want it to be safe. And like you say, if they have a greater need than I may have in my neighborhood, there's a crowd downtown. We need police officers right away. Our people are going to show up. Our first responders are going to be there. So I really think they would see the value that they're going to receive and understand why this needs to be done. So I can support option 1.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Stockton?
Yeah, just one more question. We can adjust these whenever we want, right? Is there a limit? I know that we haven't done it since 70 whatever, but 1970 whatever, but we can adjust these as needed, right?
Not without going to a vote.
Yeah,
Correct, right. Like we can revisit this if we start smaller. We can revisit this later if we're still find ourselves in a tough situation, right?
And so Eric can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think, assuming this went to the ballot and got voted on, those rates are the rates. They could go up by CPI, but if we had some sort of shortfall and we wanted to raise it another $15,
We could bring it back to the voters.
It has to go back to the voters,
Right.
yeah.
So if that's the case, and this is a voter, something that we're going to bring to the voters, I would like to go with the lighter option. Because if we really do need the money and we do want to future-proof what we're doing with our stuff, I would say I think we need to start on the safer, smaller end if we're going to do anything at all. Just show them what we've heard great things about what people want to do with this money and that we have this deficit. If we start small, we could always, I'd rather err on that side and then we need to go back at it again. God forbid, I would hope that we would have better economic times, but I would rather start small than take more than we have to. Or, giving it to the voters to decide. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you for the presentation. Did you have a comment?
I just want to add a couple things. So to address the business services that we receive, so our per capita is $3.89. And if someone makes one 911 call, our hourly rate for a police officer is $66.74. So that gives you the perspective on how low they're paying for their fees. Overall, our total revenue for the city is $398,000. We have been trying to replace or install a trash enclosure in downtown. The cost of one trash enclosure is $450,000. So our whole year's worth of revenue, it will replace one trash enclosure in downtown. So just putting some perspective around the numbers.
Yeah, appreciate that. I appreciate and I haven't opened up to the public. I know I don't see a house full of people here, but the reality is you're looking for feedback, which is why we're doing most of the talking before we open it up anyway. A lot of good discussion, how we get to how we believe what is important and what is fair for a community. A couple of comments I think that really resonate. Councilmember Stockton, the whole thing where we start talking about like sewer fees, what we're getting at is sometimes what we do is whether we have the power to raise a rate or what we're really doing here is going through a process that would take it to a ballot for the voters to decide if they wanted to. What we're trying to do is vet what is appropriate and what would be responsible as a council to promote, because taking something to the ballot is no small deal, right? It's a big decision to make, even if the outcome of that is based upon the public's belief and perception as to why they would vote for it or not. So Vice Mayor Silva, your comment of can we connect to how money is taken in and why we would want it? And we can use analogies, a 911 call, or it could be, the truth is, at 440,000, I dare say that the internal staff that it takes to manage this, if you just put two people together with salary and benefits, it's just covering the cost of process, not the cost of the actual impact to really regulate how to best serve a community. So they're all good points. I always sit back and say, what is reasonable and what is the totality of the expenses? And that is, I think, an important piece here, because just like when we're looking at other fee structures, some of them we actually have full authority to make that decision. And like if we're talking about diff fees and other fees. But in this particular case, it's fair if you're sitting on this side of the dais to go, that small business, it adds up. And everything it takes when we talk about a baseline is real. And sometimes we can't talk about what's the net receipts versus the gross. Yet if I'm selling a product that my inventory is covering the basis and it's only 5%, but if I'm selling a service and it's my labor time, it's hard to try to get to an apples to apples evaluation of what this looks like. I think in the end is, what is the impact? How do we be business friendly? How do we, in the future-proof a process? I do believe both of the options future-proof an inflationary position, because the cost of, or the actual dollar, I'd like to think that it would improve, but the reality is inflation means it really depreciates. And so this can create a system in the future. We are very low compared to anyone else around, and even Fairfield. I mean, even if we're only 1/3 to 1/4 of anything, it is so low. It won't catch up our deficit. But if we're looking everywhere and how to run government responsibly, we also have to recognize there's a cost of a service. And so how do we find that balance? All that to say, I know that this is going to come back to the council with another presentation that's going to give us some feedback on the surveys. So this is no final decision, but it's where we sit. Where do I sit? I believe the option 2 is, while it is the softer approach, it also still focuses on gross receipts that can increase over time. So it provides the best and the lowest impact of the two. And so that's where I would say, at least for me, giving what true response that you needed tonight was to hear it and also give feedback. And I do realize they're slightly different, 1.6 million to 2.4 million, but looking at it, in the end, the goal is not to simply go to the voters and say, hey, we just want more money, but it's like, how can we be responsible with that money? And also be reasonable, because it's not 1977 anymore. So, Councilmember Freeman, did you have another comment?
Yes, I just had another comment. Something perhaps to consider when we have different businesses that require different services from the city. So, and I'll just give you, for instance, perhaps we have a restaurant that sells food, wine, beer. They bring people into the downtown. They're business friendly. They're good for our community. They produce revenue, produce taxes, and they get along good in the community. And then we have others that maybe sell whiskey and wine and trouble. And, the police are called out there more frequently, more often, because of, wherever two or more are gathered, sometimes you have problems, right? So, is there something that we can look at to address some of the problems that we have with some of our businesses that are costing our city more money because of the amount of times that our police are being called out there for a variety of reasons? So I would like to see if there was a way to add that into the picture somehow.
Have to defer to our consultant. I don't believe so. We can discriminate between businesses based on the number of police calls they make.
Yeah. No, I do appreciate the comment, because it's more of a rhetorical position in that, and that is there are those who are called upon because of the impact. So high resource businesses, not to be tied to a business fee, but there clearly is an impact on city government resources. You're absolutely right. I'm going to open up to the public for any comment at this time. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back. And do you have the information? Do you believe there's enough clarity? Yeah. So when will this come back to the council?
February 10th, we will be presenting the voter survey results.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to the next item.
Yes, Mayor, this item is a resolution of intention to levy and collect assessments within the downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District for 2026 and sets the public hearing for your meeting on February 24th, 2026. And Community Development and Economic Development Director Aaron Morris is here to present.
It is loading slowly. Good evening, Mayor Carley, Vice Mayor Silva, and members of council. I'm here for the annual setting of the public hearing for the Downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District annual levy and assessment. So the action before you this evening is a resolution of this council declaring an intention to levy and collect assessments with the Downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District and setting a public hearing for February 24th of 2026. By way of background, this business improvement district was formed in 1999. This is not the P-bid that's been being worked on in the background. This is the assessment of business owners within the boundaries of the Downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District. This allows the city to collect the assessments from the businesses, and these assessments are used for economic development activities downtown and a lot of other things to really try to enhance the downtown area. The city has to renew the levy of assessments on an annual basis, and this draft resolution, as previously stated, would set a public hearing for February 24th. So the next steps, first of all, the renewal resolution recommends no changes from prior years, so the bid boundary would stay the same as well as the assessment rates. With the adoption of the resolution, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a public hearing on this matter. And at that public hearing, the Downtown Vacaville bid leadership will provide their annual presentation about all the activities they completed in 2025 related to their agreement with the city and their district plan. And they'll also touch on the components of their agreement with the city to provide some fees for services. So that will be coming back to you on February 24th. And once the public hearing happens, if there isn't a majority protest filed, you'll be asked to affirm the acceptance of the end-of-year report and district plan, authorize the execution of the district management plan agreement, and levy the assessments for 2026. This aligns with Council Strategic Plan Goal 2, strengthen the local economy, and staff is recommending by simple motion that you adopt the resolution as stated on the slide. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any questions. Seeing none from the council, I'll open it up to the public for any comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
So item 12D is a resolution initiating a zoning text amendment to amend Chapter 1404.010, general provisions, and Chapter 14.04.020, application process of the Vacaville Municipal Code to allow general plan amendment applications to be filed year-round and to modify the initiation process for general plan amendment requests.
Thank you again. I'm here this evening with an initiation of some zoning code text amendments that will affect development review processing and streamline the development process in Vacaville. As a reminder, the Vacaville General Plan is the city's primary blueprint for the future. Most of everything the city does needs to be found consistent with the general plan. Under state law, there's a limitation on modifying certain mandatory elements of the general plan. So the city's allowed to bring no more than 4 general plan amendments to this council per year. We can package them together, but they must come here in no more than 4 groups. And the city has some specific local requirements for initiating a general plan amendment and also limitations on what times of year applications can be filed that are really not consistent with standard or best practices and create some limitations on people who want to embark on ventures in our city. So more specifically, our code limits general plan applications to being filed to 2 time periods per year, March through April and September through October. And so this really is practically, as we're meeting with someone in November, they're ready to move forward with a general plan amendment, initiation application, and we tell them, well, we're excited about that. You'll need to wait till March to submit that application. So that's the current code requirement that's unique to Vacaville. And then the other piece of this is that it is not a standard practice at cities to require that a general plan amendment that's filed go to council for initiation before the processing begins. And so under the current code, we bring general plan requests to council before we've done a lot of analysis, before we've done a lot of community outreach, and we get council direction on whether or not the council wishes to entertain the general plan amendment or not. So in some cases, the council decides based on the information in front of them not to proceed. And in many cases, the council decides based on the information in front of them to proceed. One of the challenges we've experienced, I think developers have too, is what happens at the initiation process does not necessarily predict what's going to happen throughout the process. Members of the public are confused. They feel that either you've denied a project and it's never going to happen, or they think you've approved it that night without the full development review process. So again, the initiation process is something unique to Vacaville that we recommend if you consider allowing us to modify the code and bring it back to you, could really help both the public and our development community understand and participate in our process better. So this aligns with strategic plan goal, strengthen the local economy under the topic of improving the efficiency of the development review process. And this is not something that Baker Tilly recommended as part of their process improvements, but this is something that your city manager and I have heard a lot of from our customers and from members of the public. That's why it's here this evening. So what we're recommending is the council consider allowing us to revise Title 14 to allow general plan amendments to be filed at any time during the year and direct staff to develop a policy for how we manage those and schedule those so we'd never exceed the 4 amendment hearings per year. And we recommend the council let us explore eliminating the initiation process for non-city initiated projects. And so if this zoning text amendment is initiated this evening, staff will develop revisions to the Land Use and Development Code, conduct community outreach, including to the development community, and then the proposal would formally go before the Planning Commission and City Council. And that would be the conclusion. So our recommendation is by simple motion that you adopt the subject resolution and allow staff to proceed with drafting this streamlining ordinance. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. While I don't have any questions, I'll just be very brief. Thank you. This is long overdue. So I think a lot of us have heard this over the years, and appreciate the desire to actually see an internal process and fix it. So, Councilmember Freemo.
Yeah, no questions. Just want to say thank you for helping to make it more community-friendly, user-friendly, business-friendly. Thank you. And I guess there's other lights, but motion to approve.
So what I'll do is I'll open it up to the public first. And seeing no one, I'll bring it back and I'll accept that motion to approve and I'll accept the second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yes. I know a lot of people will be happy for that one. So we'll move on to our last item.
Yes, your final item is consideration of updating your commission appointment policy and taking any necessary actions to implement the selected policy. And if you do choose to have an applicant review committee, make appointments to that committee.
Great.
And this is going to be presented by City Attorney Andrea Borba.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. This evening, we have an item for consideration on adjustments to the commission appointment policy. So by way of background, the city currently has 2 commissions that are established in our municipal code. The Planning Commission that's under Chapter 2.28 and the Parks and Recreation Commission, which is under Chapter 2.34. we have a name, in the Muni code, it's identified as the Community Services Commission, but we all know it by Parks and Rec Commission. So originally the City Council adopted a policy in December of 2021. The council had requested that the commission appointment policy come back to council for consideration March 11 of 2025. And at that time, that update did not outline or describe any review, screening, or interview process for commission applicants. So right now, the appointment process that's described in the municipal code is that the members will be appointed by the mayor with approval by the city council. That's pursuant to the California Government Code. We don't have any flexibility to do anything different than what the government code requires related to the appointment process. In the council handbook committee, excuse me. So back in August, we established a couple committees. One was the Council Handbook Committee. And as part of that committee, the city manager did a wonderful job laying out everything in the council policies and procedures, as well as all the council adopted policies. And so in review and discernment by that committee of which policies most needed to come back to the council for consideration, this commission appointment policy was identified as one that could use reconsideration by the city council, primarily because staff had identified just an oversight in the filling of vacancies that just needed to be corrected and was a holdover from an earlier revision of the policy, but also just based on discussion amongst the council members about a potential opportunity to have a review process for commission applicants. So based on the committee's work, staff worked with the committee, got some feedback on some of the items that they wanted the council to consider for updating on the policy. The major change to the policy is to establish an applicant review committee. This would not impact the mayor's authority under the government code to make the appointment with ratification by the council. This applicant review committee would be solely for the purpose of reviewing the candidate applications, doing any interviews of potential candidates, and then providing the mayor with a ranked list of the candidates for the commission appointments. And that list would include all candidates. Anyone that applied would be included on the list. The applicant review committee, what is proposed is that it would consist of 2 council members, the department directors that staff the respective commissions, and 2 members of the community. The applicant review committee will take into consideration the qualifications and background and experience of the candidates, as well as their availability to attend those scheduled meetings of the commissions. Once those application reviews have happened, interviews have happened, like I mentioned earlier, the applicant review committee would prepare a ranked list, including the district where the applicant resides, and provide it to the mayor so that appointments can be made by the mayor. The other update to the policy, these were kind of administrative in nature, prompted by staff requests based on our experience with making the appointments to the commissions. One recommendation is that the applications remain on file. Currently, the policy says they remain on file for 6 months. This change to the policy would allow them to remain on file for a period of 1 year. The amendments to the policy also include some minor administrative updates, such as a person appointed to fill a vacancy shall serve through the unexpired term of the vacating commissioner, and any commissioner that's removed for non-attendance is ineligible to reapply for 12 months following the effective date of the removal. So the staff's recommendation is by simple motion to adopt the subject resolution. And if the new policy is adopted, then we would proceed to taking necessary actions to make the applicant review committee selections this evening, as we are right in the middle of receiving commissioner applications and the process for appointments for the coming year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that. And since this is the council's business, I would welcome any comments from the council at this time. Councilmember Wiley.
I'll just say I was a member of the committee, and I thought there was good discussion. We met, I don't know, 3 or 4 several times, discussed it, and it kind of reflected what we had talked about earlier, I think, during the last process, so that we would be able to be transparent and fair among all the applicants and be able to do it. And then, hear from the committee, some members of the public as well at that time. So I just wanted to say, and also Councilmember Freeman and Councilmember Chapman, we were the committee that met and discussed this several times.
Yeah, thank you. Vice Mayor Silva.
Yeah, no, I think it's, to me, I have my comments that I've made in the past about this particular item. So I think the more that involves different folks, I think it just promotes more collaboration. It promotes in its own way, its own form of transparency, And I think that, and through that, we're able to build more trust throughout our processes and selection process. I don't think there's any perfect system whatsoever, but I do believe that the more input we take from different perspectives just really strengthens us as we find ways to stay united as a community. So I just one clarification on this, just like, what is the selection process? Is that still independent of the mayor role?
So it's the applicant review process, and then the ultimate selection pursuant to the government code is by the mayor. So this committee would be established to review the applicants, do any interviews that they want to do with the applicants, and then would provide a ranked list of every applicant to the mayor for consideration. So for instance, we get 10 applicants, they review their application materials, interview them, and then they would give a list of names and rank them 1 through 10, include what district they're residing in so that the mayor can have that to take into consideration, looking at representation across the city. And then ultimately, that list will be provided to the mayor for his appointment authority, subject to the ratification of the council.
Thank you. And who establishes the committee?
The mayor.
With ratification of the council?
Yes. So it would be like any other committee, like your legislative platform committee, this council handbook committee. The mayor nominates members for the committee or makes his appointments, and then the council would, have the ability to ratify those appointments to this application review committee.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wiley.
And the commission applicants would also be informed so they know what the process is, so everyone's going through the same process. And I think that's good, so they kind of know the expectations. And the other thing I wanted to say to all council members, at the time that the window closes and the mayor receives the applications, so would all the council members would receive it, and then the applicant committee would also receive it. So we as council members will be able to see the application. So then when the mayor puts forth his recommendation, we will have had a chance to see the information about that person beforehand.
Councilmember Stockton.
Are we going to let them know where they rank on this list?
That would be the understanding, yes. If I'm understanding a rank choice.
I think that would just be for your reference,
Oh, just for
Mayor.
my
And then we
reference.
would just have that established list for a year. And then that way, if we had any vacancies arise during the middle of any terms, we could pull from that list. And we would just do an annual commission application process every year.
So like a typical personnel, the way we handle things, not everything is for public scrutiny because it's a
Right.
it's an action by the city, by the council, but it's not trying to disparage anyone based upon the recommendations of the council in a subcommittee. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and then a follow-up. Does the creation of this committee prevent any council member not assigned to it from speaking to people who apply?
They should.
I would caution.
Well, that's why I'm cautioning about this entire thing, right? Like, I think I understand what the group that brought this forward, they're part of this subcommittee to talk about these issues, their intention, at least I think, but I also don't necessarily think it's right to prevent council members from having meetings. Are we just creating an additional step, ultimately leading to the same place?
Well, I would liken it to if an organization was going to have a hiring process, and yet some other groups within the organization actually can insert into a process when there's still room for that process to play out, because the goal in advise and consent is to inform the mayor, whomever he or she is now or in the future, as I understand it, and that the mayor is in the role of mayor, and the council, it ultimately is advise and consent.
Right.
So.
But I guess my question is just, does this prevent us, council members, from discussing these applications or interviewing them separately of whoever is appointed to this?
So I think the best way to understand this would be, it depends in the sense of when in the process. So for example, let's just play this out. There's a subcommittee that interviews 10 people, and it could be for one commissioner or the other, or both in some cases. And based upon a subcommittee, the end result is a ranked choice listing that then comes to the mayor to review. The ranked choice there's no obligation to choose in any particular order, but to understand that they have at least been vetted and tested by an independent review, including a subcommittee with members of the council and those who manage commissions and stakeholder representatives from the public. What I would offer, and it can be up for some scrutiny here because it's not an element that's identified, but there's a moment where the mayor will put forward a person or persons for subject to ratification.
Right.
I could envision that once that occurs, since everybody has had that list, by the time it is published for coming to a council meeting, those positions would be identified because that's the way it works now. And so if a council member chose to say, I want to talk to that person, and I wasn't on the subcommittee, and I would like to know more about them so that my vote matters when it's time to ratify, then it frees up the council to speak at that point.
Is that right?
Yeah, so if you adopt this policy, which is at the council's discretion tonight on whether or not you agree and appreciate this applicant review committee, but it would be respect that process. The council is going to establish a committee to do that and provide that to the mayor. But once the mayor has made his selections and that staff report is published for the commission appointments, then absolutely what the mayor says, there's that period of time where all of the council is going to be asked to ratify those appointments. And so you each have your own role on the council that you can reach out to those potential appointees and ask questions about their background or, what they're going to bring to the commissions.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. It sounds like it's providing more transparency, but not limiting.
Yeah, well, that's a good discussion because that question.
Limiting us from being able to have those conversations. Just, I think everybody on here, if you're going to ratify somebody, give them that level of authority to vote on things on these commissions that are important to our community. I just don't want to create something that's going to create a roadblock for us to have conversations. Every single person up here was elected by their district to represent them and should be fully informed and able to, talk to these folks. I just wanted that kind of like, I wanted to have that conversation before we do this because I want to make sure we don't do something that we can't undo that's going to create a problem.
I appreciate that because we make policy and then sometimes we look back and say, well, what did we just do? So, Councilmember Wiley?
On that same vein, it seemed like when we changed the policy process in November of 21, when we were going strictly by districts, I and most of the council members, I think, really reached out and talked to a lot of people that were on there. But then when we changed that process a year or two later, which was, I don't know, it was December of 22 or when it was, then the next round, I did not reach out to people because I knew that the mayor was going to make that appointment, and I did not put forth a name, whereas in our first process, we had to talk to people so we could put forth a name. So it has kind of changed a little bit from that. So I think our big process is, to talk to people and encourage that we get a wide range of applicants from all across the city so that then they can be interviewed by the committee and a rank order list presented to you. So then you would look at their feedback, look at the information, and then you would bring forth a name which we would then vote on. And then if we vote it down, we'd bring back whoever your second. So I can never put forth a name. I can yes or no on who you put forth, but I can't put forward a name as a council member. I don't know if that helped or not, but it is a different process than we had first approved.
Sure.
Councilmember Chapman.
Yes, I just wanted clarification of the question that was being asked. And Councilmember Stockton, were you asking once the list has come to the council members, whether you would be able to go and speak to some of the individuals that was on that list prior to it prior to the committee completing their task and sending it on to the mayor? Were you asking during that time frame whether or not we will be able to approach any of the individuals on the list to speak with them?
So
is that what you were asking?
So I just before we ratify anybody that the mayor puts forward, I want to make sure that everybody on the council has an opportunity to do that when it's appropriate, but prior to us being able to vote for that ratification.
That's what I thought you were asking. And so, in essence, my understanding is we will all receive the list of applicants, the names. And then once we receive that, the mayor will establish a subcommittee of 4 or 5 people, primarily. And then from that point on, any contact with those individuals on the list will be made between the committee, that subcommittee. And the only time the rest of us would have communication with anyone on that list is after it comes before the entire council. Is that
after, to be clear, after the mayor makes a selection to be ratified, that gets published. And so when the names are published, that's going to come before a public council meeting. At that point, any and all people can continue in that discussion.
Right.
Some may be on a committee, some may not, but everyone has the ability to reach out and just see who this person is, because your vote.
Yes, the point I was making, yes, you continued it on, but the point I was making was up until the time that the subcommittee submits the names, the ranked names to the mayor, the other council members that were not on the subcommittee, they would have no more contact. They do not reach out to any of the individuals on that list. And we would not know until which time the mayor receives and makes his selection. Is that correct?
So that's not what the policy doesn't put a limitation on nobody can ever talk to a candidate ever. I think if the council adopts this process, the council should respect this process. They should let the applicant review committee do their part to vet the applications. That being said, when the city clerk prepares all the applications and provides them to the mayor, the applicant review committee, and the entire council, at that point, the entire council has access to all the applicants. They'll know who has all applied. And so you can already be doing your review and your own discernment if you're not on the applicant review committee. But I think if the council decides to adopt this process and abide by this policy, it seems that it would be the collective will and effort of the council to allow that applicant review committee to do their thing and provide the list to the mayor without there being a lot of individual interviews and conversations happening by people who are not on that applicant review committee.
Correct.
So it's kind of, it's a decorum decision by the council on how you want to operate. Legally, there is nothing to preclude any one of you from talking to any member of the public anytime, whether they're an applicant for a commission or not. So I don't want to make a rule that nobody can talk. I mean, if you guys want that written into the policy, we could do that, but that's not how it's currently written.
Just an expectation and understanding.
Councilmember Stockton?
If we wanted to add that, would this have to come back? Because I agree, we should let if we're going to do this, we should let that process work itself out. And once they've concluded all their interviews and come up with their list, I think the only appropriate time for us to have the conversations would be after that process happens. After the interviews and the ranking system happens, then I think it would be appropriate. Prior to that, I do think it undermines the process that we're trying to do. So is that something that we can put in with a motion, or is that something that we have to bring back? Because I don't want to bring it back.
I think that you guys can verbally motion that tonight, and staff can make that addition if you wanted to have a limitation on council members not actively on the applicant review committee, or refrain from, speaking with commission applicants until after which time the mayor has put forth his.
And I think you can word within a policy that says it's the intent of this council policy.
Right.
To afford a subcommittee the appropriate process and without confusion to candidates who are being considered. Because if all of a sudden there's a subcommittee and then there's all these other calls come in, it's like, who am I talking to? Right. What authority? And it can be confusing and distracting. But once names are put forward, forward in a nomination, I think the intent is well, by all means. Because this is advise and consent, and creating a good policy in the future that's followed so that it works is the goal. So I appreciate that. Councilmember Weil?
And just a clarification on the ranked list. So the committee meets, they all rank theirs individually, and then they come up with the total joint ranking, which is given to the mayor to make the choice, but we all have the application materials. But that ranked list won't be public information, will it?
No, that'll be provided to the mayor. I think, the applications, all the candidates and applicants, that is public information if someone were to request that. But the list, primarily is just for the mayor's consideration.
And the rest of the council would not see that, or would they?
No, and frankly, under the government code, the mayor has discretion to make these appointments. he can, at his discretion, pick number 10 on the list if you have 1 to 10. So, I mean, it is, the intent is for the committee to evaluate the backgrounds and qualifications and availability of the candidates, to provide some additional insight and vetting of the candidates for the mayor, but ultimately that appointment authority resides with the mayor.
And the committee would be 2 council members, 2 members from the public, and then the department head of Parks and Rec or planning. So you've got people looking at them from a variety of ways.
Yes?
Is it the department head or the department representative to the?
It's the department head over the commission.
The staff member that
Staff
staffs the commission.
Staff, yeah.
Vice Mayor Silva?
Just a brief clarification terminology. A specified council member, does that exclude vice mayor role?
No.
I'm just curious. I'm just like.
Too soon? No, advise. Advise and consent is there's a mayoral responsibility, and then there's the entire council in that process. So,
I was just nuanced.
Yeah,
I was just curious.
You can get her opinion. I'd give you mine. Would you like to weigh in just to
I
clarify?
think the mayor's making the appointments, and so the council would be the remainder of the individuals on the city council, including the vice mayor.
So like, I think, as far as like, big picture, I'm curious to see, and it doesn't necessarily worked into this policy, but maybe it's something that those two non-mayor electeds rotate every year, giving people different opportunities to weigh in on that process if they're interested.
So if this policy is adopted, the city clerk will take this applicant review committee appointment and add it to our list of regular appointments that the mayor makes on an annual basis. So that will be, there will be opportunity for it to be different individuals based on who wishes to sit on that committee.
I just, to me, in my opinion, I think an appropriate amount of folks from different perspectives honestly helps protect whoever's in that mayor role and how they go appoint, and there's like some type of mutual understanding. So thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, so just for clarification, it's good questions. That would be the time that it comes up on the list of an annual, because we would be moving this to an annual list anyway, which I think we saw this last year and the importance of it. So, Councilmember Freemel?
Yeah, I'm just curious, who picks the 2 from the public?
The mayor.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to open up to the public for any comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'm sorry. I want to add the language.
Well, we'll have discussion. So based upon what was recommended, that there is a subcommittee, we have a motion. Did you second it?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that there was a comment made that part of the motion would be to direct staff to add that element of the remainder of the council members not on the application review committee would not speak to the applicants until the mayor has.
So, yeah, to be fair, since you made the motion, there's that language. Is there any other language?
No, I from what I understand, that's the only change you would like to see to the policy language.
That's what we're all talking about.
So Councilmember Freeman, do you want to state that just so it's clear for the record? The motion is to accept staff's recommendation, but to also include language that let the process work its through a subcommittee and refrain from contacting applicant members until after one's been put forward by the mayor. Just say yes.
I couldn't say it better.
Yeah.
Okay, so you accept that as part of it? Okay, you accept that friendly amendment?
I'll also second.
And you'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So that passes. I just want to make one comment on this, since it is the policy, and you're going to have to take some direction. I would like, first of all, I'd like to make this comment before we actually make those appointments. I think this is a good process. And if there's ever been a thought leading up to this that maybe somehow I may have felt differently, I have truly felt strongly in the past about the process that we had. I felt that it was incorrect. And then I also felt that as the couple years passed, kind of, Councilmember Wiley, to your point, it's like, what is the policy? So it needed to come back. And so I appreciate the work of the subcommittee in this process, and there's probably other policies that are going to come back before this council. I would prefer to have a good process, and one that, as I look at it, outlasts any one of us who are sitting here. And I believe that this council-adopted policy will do that. It's no different than my years of experience as the chief of police and setting up panels for selection and being very clear. Just because a council thinks, well, you need to pick number one, I cannot tell you how many times I did not pick number one. And sometimes it may be just because maybe not this year, or they're not ready. And so the goal is input and transparency. So I think that we're on the right path here. And so I hope that you all understand that to get to this point wasn't that I think that this is somehow a compromise for me. This is exactly what it needs to be, in my opinion. It's just that that's not how the commissions were being selected. However well-intended they were, it created proxy positions of unelected people. And instead, the commissions are supposed to do the work directed by staff at the behest of the entire council. And this creates good policy and good practice. So thank you for the subcommittee's work on it. And so we do need to take some action then.
Yeah, so with the adoption of the policy, the next recommended action is that the mayor make appointments to the applicant review committee, since we are in the middle of soliciting applications for the commission at this time, and we want that committee to be able to act as soon as that application window closes.
Okay. I'm going to, if you are willing, I'm going to put Councilmember Chapman on the committee. Would you be willing to do that? Okay. And Councilmember Stockton, would you be willing to do that? Okay. So there's the two. Anything else that we need?
The two community members.
Okay, that's right. Okay. So the two community members would be Kathleen Ramos and Sean McMahon.
Have they agreed to do that?
Yes, they have. Any questions on those selections?
I'm sorry. We're conferring. I'm sorry, what did you ask me?
No, is there any questions with that or any?
No, we will, the city clerk will reach out to that committee and provide them with updates on the application process. And so we can continue on, and then when the staff makes the updates to the policy, that will be posted in public.
And just to comment on that, it's a fair question. I didn't come up with those names on my own. I asked staff to communicate with, if we're looking at commissions, people who are stakeholders in the community that could serve, and both the department heads that would oversee those commissions provided a handful of names of people that they believed would be able to fulfill those duties. And I simply looked at those and chose those names. I didn't come here somehow prepared because it was my own choice. It was shared with me. I just made those selections though. But what I did is over the weekend, I communicated with those that had been recommended by staff, thank you. And they happily agreed to participate in the subcommittee if this council chose to adopt this policy tonight. So, well, thank you with that. You have another question? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Blurt out until I'm read here. So thank you for explaining how these names came up, right up the top of your head. And so Sean McMahon has served as Parks and Rec Commissioner, is that correct? And has Kathleen Ramos served as a commissioner?
No, just maybe, yes, she has in the past. So some of them are people who have served as commissioners and understand the needs within the community, I do believe. But that was the ask is who would be appropriate that could help inform? Because in some cases, although it's independently chosen by the mayor, having names put forward allows for a level of independence that it's not just about who sits in the seat.
So I appreciate that process too. And I mean, when we were talking about the committee, we were just saying 2 members of the public. So I hadn't thought of someone that had already served. So I think that it's not necessarily a requirement going forward, but I think getting started with this, we'll see, because they will certainly know that what you need to be a successful commissioner. So thanks for that.
And just know, my thought process was when I saw the names and I reflected on those 2, I think we all know them in some form or fashion, but the importance of being able to help those who are on the subcommittee are looking at community stakeholders who know and get the community and understand how to work with business. And so looking at that, I think it was an important process, and I appreciated the input of, if we're going to create something, let's start with a good practice and a good process. And so I think this is it. Councilmember Stockton?
Does the council need to ratify those appointments? If so, I'd like to make a motion that we ratify them.
I don't think that it requires a ratification. I think the only thing that required a ratification was the policy. And moving forward, what there'll be an annual review of who is on different committees, and this will be one of the standing committees. Do I have that correct?
So normally when you appoint members to a committee, the council does ratify your
The
appointment.
council does, but not for the public appointees, do they?
For everyone that you're putting on the applicant review committee.
Okay.
So both the council members
Okay, I
and
can
the
see
2
that. Fair
members of the
enough.
public that you've named. So it would be akin to any other committee appointments.
Yeah,
that-
even when you, like the Solano Commission.
Oh, that's
on
right.
Women's and
That's
Girls
fair.
and things like that. So
I hadn't
they-
thought of it that way. Okay.
Well, then I motion that the council ratifies the mayor's appointees for this subcommittee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And so then Stockton and Chapman will be the ones for the 2026 going forward. This will go, and then next year can.
We reviewed like we normally do.
Right. And what about the public? Will they change every year as well?
Maybe.
Very likely, maybe.
So it's like any other committee, they can maybe continue if that's the desire, or, you can select new members too. So it would just be the same as any other committee
Okay.
appointments.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, there, we actually got a council policy adopted. How about that?
Good job, subcommittee.
All right.
Good work on the committee.
Yes. Well, with it, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate that, because to me, good policy and good governance is really important. So I know it seemed contentious when this seemed to come up this last year. The intention wasn't to create division, but it was trying to get to what would be a good process. So I thank you. And with that, it's 8:55, and we're going to, we have no more closed session because we addressed that earlier. So we will stand in adjournment. Good night, Vacaville.
Good night.